Chapter 775. Chu Qingyan immediately took the envelope and took out a piece of paper from it. She lowered her head and carefully read it. The more she read, the more shocked she became. It said that there were several unknown forces that had entered Jiangnan recently. They were chasing after a master and 2 servants. Some of these people came from other countries, while others came from their own country. The results of the investigation were that these people were most likely from the mysterious Lan Zhuang organization. Lan Zhuang? These 2 words were very familiar. Chu Qingyan thought for a bit before realizing. Wasn't this the underground Lan Zhuang that Dong Ting had brought her to look for herbs? Originally, I didn't take this matter to heart, but they made a lot of noise and didn't put Xian's government in their eyes. That's why I had Hua Ling investigate in private. This is the news I just received today. Xiao Su explained and nodded at her meaningfully after he finished speaking. Chu Qingyan immediately understood what was going on. Combining what the other party had said during the battle earlier, as well as what Sima Jun and his servant had said, she quickly guessed that the people mentioned in the letter were most likely Sima Jun and the others. Big Ice Cube, did I cause trouble for you? If there were other forces involved, and they had such a strong background, she was a bit worried that she would cause trouble for him. Hearing this, Xiao Su's gentle face suddenly became solemn. He withdrew his hand and placed it behind his back, his gaze deeply falling on her body. Ian, you don't have to keep thinking that you're causing trouble for me. I'd rather you do things boldly and don't restrict yourself. All these years, she had devoted herself wholeheartedly to him and did everything with him as the starting point. Girls of her age were all bold and reckless and were pampered like a treasure in the palm of others. However, she seemed to be more mature than others since a long time ago. He wanted her to be livelier and more unbridled. Big Ice Dash Chu Qingyan looked up at him. First, she was shocked by his seriousness. Then she was shocked by his words. When these words entered her ears, she analyzed them bit by bit in her mind. After the clouds dispersed, the essence left behind slowly condensed into a small seed that quietly fell into her heart. Then, it bloomed into a beautiful little flower. That feeling warmed her heart and lungs. After seeing the tears in her eyes, Xiao Su sighed softly. He reached out his hand and placed it on the side of her face tenderly. Ian, you can be more willful. You won't blame me for giving you trouble? Chu Qingyan asked in confusion. Xiao Su chuckled. When have I ever blamed you for causing trouble? But sometimes you'll be fierce to me. She pushed her luck. You are allowed to be willful, but you are not allowed to hurt yourself. Xiao Su shook his head. This little guy was still so muddle-headed. Chu Qingyan couldn't help revealing a smile after hearing this. She raised her hands and twirled them in front of him. Then I wasn't hurt this time. After she finished twirling, she felt that she was really stupid. Love really made people not like themselves. But when she saw the smile on the big iced block's face, Chu Qingyan couldn't help but smile as well. She suddenly thought of a joke she saw on Weibo a long time ago. When you are with the person you love, what is the thing you do the most? You smile as soon as you see them. Now that she experienced it herself, she finally agreed with it. When Chu Qingyan came out after changing into a clean set of clothes, Xiao Su was no longer in the room. However, she heard some small sounds coming from outside the door, so she walked out. Xiao Su was currently talking to Hua Ling in the yard, so he was a bit distracted in the room. When he saw her come out, he waved his hand at her. Chu Qingyan skipped over. Hua Ling nodded at her and continued speaking. The Lu family ship was used as a cover. Official Lin just sent a message saying that the real salt ship hasn't been found yet. Then, send a few people to help Feng Yi. We can't let those people get away with it. Xiao Su said in a deep voice. Hua Ling replied and retreated. Chu Qingyan stood on the side and listened without interrupting. After Hua Ling left, she couldn't wait to ask, Big Ice Block, is Official Lin's sudden inspection of the docks related to the smuggling of official salt? Xiao Su nodded. The number of officials involved this time is far more than the previous times, so Feng Yi attaches great importance to it. Chu Qingyan suddenly understood. No wonder Xioli told me that our cargo ship is likely to be detained. Yen Luo will be back the day after tomorrow. What should we do? Can I go through the back door? The person in front of him looked at him with eager eyes. Xiao Su couldn't help but chuckle. You can go through the back door, but you still shouldn't take the initiative to show up. But did he agree or not? Chu Qingyan was confused. Don't you still have an ally, Hua Xiuli? Xiao Su deliberately mystified her. Chu Qingyan recalled that Hua Xiuli and Lin Fengyi didn't like each other. She felt uncertain. Do you think that if Hua Xiuli shows up, it won't make things more chaotic? Xiao Su shook his head and slowly walked forward. Chu Qingyan immediately followed, anxiously waiting for his response. After keeping her in suspense for a while, Xiao Su finally spoke. In the 2 months that you've been staying in the residence, the young master of the Hua family often bumped into Fengyi. It's become a common occurrence for them to chat over meals. In the many years that I've known him, except for official business, Fengyi rarely eats at the same table with outsiders. So, do you think the relationship between them is business? If it's not official business, then it must be a private matter. Chu Qingyan casually replied, but after she said it, she seemed to have grasped the truth. Her eyes widened. When did their relationship become so good? It's better to squash enmity rather than keep it alive. Or perhaps, no discord, no concord. Xiao Su commented with interest. He recalled that when he heard about their relationship, he had inadvertently asked Fengyi about it. Unexpectedly, his reaction was unexpected. It seemed that there was something fishy going on. Chu Qingyan chuckled. That's good. If Hua Xiuli can settle official Lin, then it'll be beneficial for our business. Xiao Su chuckled. Not necessarily. Who knows, maybe the first one to be destroyed would be her. Chu Qingyan was shocked. Then it's better not to be so close. Xiao Su patted her head and smiled without saying anything. At this moment, Jean Exon came to report. Miss Sima has woken up and wants to see Master. Chu Qingyan responded and was about to leave when her wrist was circled by a force. She turned back to look at him in confusion. She only heard him say, "It's fine to make friends, but if you dare to attract any more suitors," the latter half of his words were concealed in a cold snort. Chu Qingyan shuddered and immediately raised her hand to guarantee, "Don't worry, I definitely won't." Hearing that she wanted to, Xiao Su was satisfied and let her go. When Chu Qingyan turned around, she sighed lightly. This big vinegar jar, didn't he just tell her to be more willful? But on this matter, the big ice cube was rather persistent and jealous. After Chu Qingyan left, Turin hurried over with a secret report. Chapter 776. Chu Qingyan followed Jean Exan to a side courtyard in the East Wing. That courtyard was specially used to entertain guests. When they arrived at the door of Sima Jun's room, they coincidentally bumped into Ethereal, who was carrying a medicine box. Chu Qingyan stopped and asked, "How is he?" "That young man's injuries are serious, but because he has a strong will, his bones are strong, and he was treated in time, he will be fine after lying down for 10 days to half a month," Ethereal said with a smile. Because he had saved a life, he was in a good mood. Chu Qingyan sighed in relief. Then what about Miss Sima? The drug has worn off, and she has regained consciousness. Ethereal paused and his expression became serious. Little Wang Fei, when this subordinate took her pulse, this subordinate felt that her internal energy was unfathomable. In a situation where we don't know if she is a friend or foe, you have to be careful. Just as she had expected, this person's martial arts were not below hers. Chu Qingyan nodded. "I will be careful. It's been hard on you. You can go rest first." Ethereal stood in place and did not respond. There was a hesitant expression on his face. Chu Qingyan was curious. "Do you have something else?" As though he had made an important decision, Ethereal gathered his courage, but he didn't dare to look at her. He slowly asked, "I heard that Jean Ling and the others will be back in 2 days. Did their journey go smoothly?" Chu Qingyan pursed her lips and smiled. She was afraid that Kong Ling had an ulterior motive. If he wanted to ask about Jean Ling, he could have asked Tuo Ling or Turin. It seemed that the person he wanted to inquire about was not Jean Ling. It was quite smooth. It was just that there was a storm along the way, which delayed the journey. At this point, Chu Qingyan glanced at Jiang Yi. Seeing that his expression had relaxed, She purposely whetted his appetite. However, during this journey, I heard that a few people caught a cold and fell sick. Who's sick? Ethereal blurted out. When he saw Chu Qingyan's teasing expression, he lowered his head and coughed lightly to cover it up. Don't worry, it's not Yen Luo. Chu Qingyan laughed. After being played by the young Wang Fei, Ethereal's face alternated between red and white. But in the end, she realized she was in the wrong and immediately excused herself. Chu Qingyan looked at his back as he fled. She slowly stopped smiling, but she still couldn't help shaking her head. In the past 2 months, she had heard Xining mention Ethereal a lot. He was like a top that would never get tired, constantly spinning in the medical book. In fact, she knew that the best way to not remember someone was to keep yourself busy. He hoped that the love between the two of them would not be so bumpy anymore. Before Chu Qingyan stepped through the door, she straightened her clothes and strode in. When her gaze landed on the person half lying on the bed, Chu Qingyan froze in place. It was still the snow-white jasmine pattern dress she had worn when they first met today. What was different was that the white veil covering her face had been taken off, revealing a beautiful face. Right now, she was lazily leaning against the wall of the bed. Her ink-black hair was tied up high with a pearl and jade belt. The two ends of the jade belt hung down and there were 2 strings of sapphire blue pearl tassels at the end. As she moved, they reflected a serene blue light. There was a pair of green jadeite earrings, simple but exquisite. A lock of long hair fell by her cheeks. Amidst her enchanting charm, there was the beauty of a pure young girl. It was the first time Chu Qingyan had seen someone who could soften 2 extreme temperaments together without making people feel it was out of place. She was like an immortal and a demon. She had the pure immortal aura of jasmine and the seductive demonic aura of roses. She was clearly young, but there was a maturity and steadiness in her eyes that did not belong to her age. So, this person was the one mentioned in the letter, the one who single-handedly established the Blue Manor, the one who kept a low profile and never showed up? At this moment, Chu Qingyan had an inexplicable feeling towards the person in front of her. The less guarded she was, the more suspicious she was. What? Are you infatuated with this lady? Sima Jun saw the dazed look on the person in front of her and could not help but tease her. When such bold words came out of her mouth, Chu Qingyan was shocked when she came back to her senses. She almost forgot that she was still wearing men's clothes. Chu Qingyan lowered her brows and hid her shock. When she raised her head, she walked towards Sima Jun. As if she did not hear her joke, Chu Qingyan asked with concern, "Miss Sima, do you still feel unwell? Your doctor is very skilled." "I'm fine now. Many thanks to young master for your help, for taking us in, and for hiring a doctor for us," Sima Jun said in a sincere tone. Chu Qingyan smiled. "It was fate that brought us together. This humble one did not do much. Miss Sima need not take it to heart. You should focus on recuperating. Meeting young Master Chu is my fortune." Sima Jun smiled again. A beauty's smile was better than flowers blooming in spring. Chu Qingyan almost could not regain her senses. "Miss Sima, although it is not appropriate to ask about your private affairs, after today's incident, this humble one is a little worried for you. Who did you offend to be hunted down like this?" She had a guess in her heart. It was nothing more than a betrayal. Someone wanted to take advantage of the situation to climb up the ranks. But she wanted to hear her explanation, and then use it to judge whether she should intervene. The big ice cube's words made her ponder deeply. Whether one was a friend or foe, and whether one was an enemy or a friend, it was not just a matter of timing. Sima Jun looked indifferently at Chu Qingyan, and the corners of her mouth curled up slightly. Then the atmosphere suddenly changed. She covered her eyes with her sleeve and began to sob. "It's a long story. I have a family business. It's not big, but it's not small either. I have many subordinates working together. But some people are not satisfied with the status quo. They want to climb up the ranks and take over my family business. So, they took advantage of the time when I was out and plotted to delay the guards who were secretly protecting me. That's why I had no one to ask for help, and ended up with heavy casualties." This beautiful little face, coupled with this sobbing voice, was simply too pitiful. Chu Qingyan stepped forward, not knowing what to say to comfort her. At this moment, Sima Jun spoke again. "Young master, you saved my life. You are my benefactor. I have no way to repay you. I can only repay you with my body. I hope young master will not abandon me." Chu Qingyan's eyes widened and her mouth gaped open. She could not believe that something that had happened on television was actually happening to her. But as if not allowing her to react, Sima Jun had already reached out to hug her. Her voice was filled with grievance and loneliness. "I'm about to become homeless. Young master, can you bear to let a weak girl wander the streets without anyone to rely on?" "Weak girl?" These words didn't seem to fit. The atmosphere changed so quickly that Chu Qingyan forgot to push her away. And the person who hugged Chu Qingyan had a teasing smile in her eyes. "Although I'm not someone who cares about looks, but to be honest, your appearance suits my taste. Marrying you, I won't lose out." When the fierce cavalry outside heard the voice coming from inside, they really wanted to kneel down. "My God, little princess, you've attracted another peach blossom into the house. Take care of master." Chapter 777. Chu Qingyan took a deep breath as she placed her hands on Gu Ruoyan's shoulders and pushed her away. "Miss, please have some self-respect." When Sima Jun heard this, she really wanted to laugh, but she was afraid of angering her, so she suppressed it in her heart. She didn't hug her too tightly, so she took advantage of Chu Qingyan's strength and left to lean against the bed wall. However, she didn't stop wiping the corners of her eyes, looking heartbroken. Sima Jun knew that there should be a limit to her jokes, so she didn't say anything. It was the first time she said such words to someone, so Chu Qingyan also felt that it was inconceivable. They were clearly both women. Chu Qingyan looked at the person in front of her and suddenly felt a sense of helplessness. Why didn't this person play her cards according to the rules? She gave her a shock the moment she appeared. Could it be that the big ice cube's information was wrong? Impossible, this person must be too good at acting. But even though she knew that this person's words were half true and half false, she couldn't expose her. It was simply like seeing a ghost. At this time, Sima Jun's maid, Tan Ying, walked in. Because her injuries were relatively light, she didn't have any trouble moving around. Chu Qingyan took the opportunity to slip away. "You master and servant must have something to talk about, so I won't disturb you. I'll come back later to see Mississippi." After speaking, she didn't wait for Sima Jun's reply and turned to walk towards the door. Sima Jun pulled up her sleeves and looked at Chu Qingyan's back view, laughing uncontrollably. Tan Ying originally had a worried expression, but when she saw her master's expression, she couldn't help but be surprised. "Master, what are you laughing about?" Sima Jun kept her smile and her eyes lit up. "Tan Ying, we must have accidentally hugged onto someone powerful." Tan Ying's eyes widened. This subordinate doesn't understand. Soft sounds came from outside. Sima Jun raised her head and her gaze passed through the window and landed on the two figures conversing under the tree. She said with a faint smile, "Tan Ying, this Chu Qingyan isn't an ordinary person. If we can cooperate with her, it won't be a problem to get rid of those traitors in Lawn Manor." Tan Ying didn't understand. "Master, how did you know?" "The martial arts of the guards in this house are not weaker than those of Shadow. There are no less than 30 hidden guards hiding in every corner of the courtyard. How can they be ordinary people with such powerful guards? Furthermore, they are well trained. It's not hard to tell that they are a team of elites. The decorations and layout of this place are enough to let ordinary people live a rich life for the rest of their lives. Furthermore," she thought for a moment before continuing, "from Chu Yan's speech and behavior, it's enough to tell that she has a good upbringing. It can be seen that she's either rich or noble. I also feel that their strength is not what we see on the surface." Shadow was Sima Jun's #1 bodyguard team. Tan Ying had always been someone who only obeyed her master. As long as it was her master's words, she would believe them without a doubt. Her face lit up. "If we can get them to help us, then we can ruthlessly strike a blow at those traitors." Sima Jun propped up his chin with one hand and said faintly, "However, it's not easy to get someone to help us for no reason." Tan Ying suddenly recalled the scene she saw when she entered the door and couldn't help but complain, "Master, Could it be that you want to sacrifice your body? Sima Jun choked. She was successfully disgusted by her subordinate's shocking words. Although doing it was one thing, hearing it was another. However, she shook her head and said, "Body? I don't think he wants it." Tanning was indignant when she heard that. What? Does Chu Yen dare to despise Master? Master outshines the moon and flowers, captivates the birds and beasts. Being with him makes Master feel wronged. Sima Jun chuckled. This little girl's face changed really quickly. Her gaze once again landed on Chu Qingyan outside the window. Thinking of the young girl's fragrance when she hugged her just now, she couldn't help but smile happily. She's not gay. Thinking about how Chu Qingyan's body had stiffened just now, he guessed that she must have been frightened by her shocking words. It seemed like she was still a pure and innocent young lady, and he felt like he had led her astray. Tanning didn't understand and was still thinking about the meaning of those words when she heard her master speak again. Let Shangguang recuperate well. We'll stay here for the next 2 days. There's no need to worry about his life. Yes, master. Also, try to contact our people and investigate Chu Yan's background. Only by knowing yourself and your enemy can we negotiate terms. Understood. Standing under a tree in the courtyard, Chu Qingyan was listening to Jean Xian's report. Jean Ling has sent a message saying that they will arrive at the pier tomorrow. She hopes that we can send people to unload the goods. You bring people to the pier tomorrow to welcome them. With that, Chu Qingyan looked worried. It's just that official Lin is a fair and impartial person. I don't know if he can make an exception this time. I hope that Xioli will succeed immediately. Young Master Hua. She has been doing business in Jiangnan for so many years. She has her own way of doing things. You don't have to worry. Chu Qingyan nodded. Thinking of Big Ice Block's words today, she couldn't help but find it funny. Xioli and official Lin were really an unimaginable pair. Right, from today onwards, we have to strengthen the guards in the residence. I'm afraid that those people will come looking for trouble. After she showed her talent in Jiangnan, more and more people started to recognize her. Those people only needed to ask around a little to find out that she was involved in today's fight. For safety's sake, she had to make the necessary preparations. His Highness has already ordered Hua Ling and the others to increase patrols in the morning and evening, Jean Xian replied. Chu Qingyan smiled when she heard that. Big Ice Cube was indeed more thoughtful than her. Where is His Highness now? In the study. Chu Qingyan nodded and quickly walked towards the study. She wanted to discuss Sima Jun's matter with Big Ice Block. In the study, Turin respectfully handed over the secret letter. Xiao Su opened it and skimmed through it. A cold smile appeared in his inky eyes. Imperial Mother specially sent people over. Aren't you afraid that this prince will reject them? He casually threw the letter on the table and sneered. Turin replied, this time, Her Highness the Empress sent over the 2D daughters of the uncle of the 3 kingdoms. Because they set off from the Liang family, our people didn't pay much attention to them. However, they recently discovered that the carriage was heading towards Jiangnan and would arrive in 3 days. This immediately attracted the attention of the hidden guards, so they sent a letter to Water Spirit to investigate this matter. Who would have thought that they were coming for Master? After saying this, Turin couldn't help but lower his head. Her Highness the Empress had sent many women to Master in the past, but since Master was annoyed and left for the border last time, the Empress had restrained herself. He didn't think that she would use the same trick again today. The front lines are in an emergency. It's time for Imperial Father to put the Liang family in an important position, so she thought that it was time to pave the way for the Liang family. Xiao Su's tone was cold and it was hard to tell whether he was happy or angry. Turin knew that Master's words weren't clear. As long as the 4th prince withdrew his troops, that would be the time for Master to be summoned to the battlefield. At that time, in order to appease Master's people, His Majesty would definitely promote the Liang family. Turin suddenly felt that the weather was a bit cold. Chapter 778. Turin put away his thoughts and asked, then what about the people sent by the Liang family? His master and the young Wang Fei were in love. If an outsider came to disturb and the young Wang Fei was unhappy, his master would be affected. At that time, the subordinates would be the ones to suffer. So he felt that it was necessary to prevent this from happening. Xiao Su said without thinking, "Let them go back to where they came from." Turin felt that it was a bit tricky. Their guards seemed to have been sent by the empress from the palace. Xiao Su frowned. It seemed that Muho wouldn't give up until she got her way. Turin waited for a while and didn't hear a reply from the person above. He couldn't help but call out, "Don't worry about them first. Wait until we reach Jiangnan." Xiao Su hadn't finished speaking when his gaze landed on the door. "Who's outside?" Turin was startled and turned to look. He saw a red robe appear inside the door. It was the young Wang Fei. Turin suddenly remembered the topic he had discussed with his master just now. His expression was a bit unnatural. This subordinate won't disturb the two masters. This subordinate will leave first. Without looking at Turin, who quickly retreated, after the door was closed again, Chu Qingyan looked calmly at the people sitting at the table. "What were you talking about just now? Didn't you hear it outside the door?" Xiao Su raised a brow. Chu Qingyan's heart was filled with anger. Of course, she knew what he had just said. However, what she had heard and what he had said were two completely different things. Xiao Su didn't sense that something was wrong with her. His mind was thinking about the official salt sale this time. After waiting for a long time and not hearing him speak, Chu Qingyan was annoyed. She strode to his table and put her hands on the table, asking, "Is the Empress planning to send you concubines? According to their status, they should be Tsefei or even higher." Muho had always wanted to support the Liang family. If it wasn't for her hard destiny, she would have already arranged a marriage between him and the Liang family. Or even higher. These words made her feel uncomfortable. Didn't he mean that he wanted to replace her? "Then what do you think?" Her tone was stiff. "What do you want to do?" Xiao Su's mind was not on this matter, so when he heard her question, he frowned in confusion. Seeing the impatient look on his face, Chu Qingyan's heart sank. "Are you going to take them all in and put them in the residence?" "But I don't agree." But at this time, she remembered that she was in ancient times. In the ancient times, it was normal for a man to have 3 wives and 4 concubines. If the wife was jealous, she would be divorced by the husband's family. So here, the wife had to help take in concubines, manage the backyard, and take care of the children of concubines. Thinking of this, Chu Qingyan felt like she was in an ice cellar. The person in front of her was a hero of a generation. He had many military achievements and was praised by all countries. Other than the Sichuan emperor, his status was above 1 person and below 10,000 people. How could such an outstanding person only have 1 person in his heart? Even if he was willing, not to mention the court, even the Sichuan emperor's descendants would not agree. Everyone said that women in love were fools. They threw their hot blood into the relationship and didn't care about anything else. At this moment, it was as if the cruel truth was revealed in front of her after leaving the sweet life of 2 people. Those 4 words, she couldn't say it out loud. Xiao Su didn't know what she was feeling awkward about. Seeing her red eyes, he couldn't help reaching out to touch her. What's wrong? How should she tell him that she didn't like those strange women getting close to him? He could only have her by his side. A third person shouldn't interfere in their world. But how could she open her mouth to say these words? If he stopped the Liang family's young Mrs. Carriage, then she could act coquettishly with him. But he let Turin pass. Did that mean he accepted Empress Liang's arrangement? In the past, he said that he would only accompany her until they grew old. Could she believe it? Some people said that an oath was just a liar saying it to a fool. Was he a liar? The more she thought about it, the sadder she felt. She didn't want him to touch her, so she turned her face to the side and missed his hand. Xiao Su was stunned. At this time, Chu Qingyan didn't want to face him for a second, so she turned and left. Xiao Su didn't have time to stop her before she left with large strides. Looking at his empty hand, Xiao Su couldn't figure it out. But before she left, the little fellow's eyes had a trace of grief and anger, making his heart inexplicably clench. What was the little fellow throwing a tantrum about? Hualing walked in while rubbing his head. "Master, the little princess consort doesn't seem too happy. Did someone bully her?" As soon as he said this, Hualing felt the cold gaze in front of him. He wanted to bite off his own tongue. The little princess consort had left from here, so it must be related to master. He really touched the pot that didn't boil. This subordinate didn't say anything. He tried to mend the pen after the sheep were lost. Without waiting for the person sitting at the table to respond, Hualing immediately treated himself as heir. He lowered his head and felt the cold air in the room. He wanted to cry but had no tears. Does she look very sad? Xiao Su was silent for a while. Hualing carefully looked up at master in front of him, but he couldn't tell if he was happy or angry from his face. He could only bitterly consider his words. It seems like it. This subordinate isn't very clear. After saying this, master in front of him was silent again. Hualing wanted to cry. He shouldn't have mentioned the little princess consort just now. After Chu Qingyan left the study, she aimlessly walked through the house like a ghost. The subordinates she met on the way wanted to go up and greet her, but when they saw how distracted she was, they all tactfully avoided her. A cool breeze blew over, cooling down the heat in her head. She looked at the surrounding scenery in a daze. It turned out that she had walked into her parents' courtyard. She felt that it wasn't appropriate for her father and mother to see her like this. She turned and was about to leave when she coincidentally heard her father talking to Xiao Fan. Xiao Fan, I've been so annoyed lately. Do you know how to climb up that tree and find the little bird? Father Chu was squatting under the white poplar tree in the yard as he rambled on. Xiao Fan smelled her master's scent and immediately stood up from the ground. She shook off the dirt on her fur and happily ran in front of her. Only then did Father Chu notice his daughter standing in the yard. He also happily jumped in front of her. Kai Kai, why are you here? Did you bring something good to eat? Father Chu looked her up and down as though he wanted to pull out some candy from her body. Chu Qingyan forced a smile as she said, I had nothing to do, so I walked around. Didn't my injury heal? I came to see you and Mother. Oh right, where's Mother? She went to the kitchen. She said she wanted to stew something good for you and the scallions. When it came to food, Father Chu couldn't help but drool. When Chu Qingyan heard this, she felt sad inside. Her father and mother liked the big ice cube so much, but would the big ice cube still take care of them in the future? After love waned, would he still love the house and its crow? When a person started to deny themselves, they would then deny everything. Chapter 779. No matter how muddle-headed Mr. Chu was, he could tell that his daughter was in low spirits. Daughter, are you unhappy? Mr. Chu circled around her. Xiao Fan was also squatting on the ground, sticking out its tongue as it looked at her in confusion. Chu Qingyan's eyes welled up, and she almost burst into tears when she heard her closest relative's concerned question. But she didn't dare to show it. She averted her gaze and looked at an unknown point in front of her. She forced herself to sound normal. I've run into some difficulties in my business, so I'm a little troubled. But don't worry, Father. I'll be fine soon. Mr. Chu looked at her suspiciously, but he couldn't see anything wrong with her. Finally, he said, Then don't keep it to yourself. If someone makes you unhappy, you can find a son-in-law to vent your anger for you. If that doesn't work, you still have Father. Chu Qingyan nodded. Then, Father ran to play under a tree, shaking his head. Xiao Fan was the only one left in front of her, staring at her unblinkingly. She smiled, but there was a hint of bitterness in her smile. Love made people's thoughts run wild, and they worried about their gains and losses. Xiao Fan, where's your husband? Xiao Fan's eyes were filled with sorrow at her question. Chu Qingyan knew that snow foxes were intelligent, so she squatted down and stroked its fur. She apologized in a low voice, I'm sorry. Xiao Fan tilted its head and rubbed against her palm, comforting her instead. Just then, the gerfalcon flew in from the other side of the yard and landed in front of her. It held its head high and puffed out its chest, looking very stylish. Then, there was a burst of playful laughter. Glutinous Rice Ball and the other two ran into the yard and surrounded the gerfalcon, continuing to clamor. This lively scene made Chu Qingyan forget her troubles for a moment. Thus, Chu Qingyan stayed for dinner. At the dining table, Mrs. Chu poured her a bowl of rice and asked lovingly, Why did you come to join us today? No matter how good it looks with spring onions in it, You'll get tired of it, Mr. Chu said cheerfully. Mrs. Chu glared at him. This unintentional sentence made Chu Qingyan slightly stunned. People who had been together for a long time would also hate each other. There was a 7-year itch in marriage. She and Big Ice Cube had only been together for 5 years, and they had already reached this point. Her heart ached. Chu Machen's mother turned around and saw that Chu Machen was lost in thought. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. Chu Qingyan came back to her senses and smiled. "I'm wondering what soup this is. It smells so good." "This is stewed pork ribs with mushrooms. I've added some herbs to it. It can be used to nourish muscles and bones." Mrs. Chu said with a smile, "It was supposed to be stewed for you and His Highness, but the servants said that you were here, so they divided it into 2 bowls. Eat it while it's still hot." Chu Qingyan looked at the delicious soup in front of her. Her heart felt a little uncomfortable. She was afraid that it would take half a day to cook this soup. She was reluctant to drink it, but her mother was in front of her. She could only drink it 1 mouthful at a time. "Mother, you don't have to work so hard to cook this for us. Just leave it to the servants." Her heart ached. "What are you saying? How can these things be more reliable than doing it yourself? You and His Highness are still young. You can't lack nutrition." Mrs. Chu shook her head disapprovingly. Chu Qingyan knew that she couldn't persuade her mother, so she could only bury her head and eat. In the main courtyard, Xiao Su was sitting behind the dining table. At this time, Hualing walked in with his head lowered. "Master, the young princess consort is eating dinner in Master Chu's courtyard. She said that you don't need to wait for her." After saying this, Hualing lowered his head even more. This time, the young princess consort and master would be at odds again. Xiao Su made a sound in response. He picked up the chopsticks and casually ate a few mouthfuls. After a while, he put it down again. "Take it away." "Master, this..." Hualing looked at the almost untouched food and was a bit surprised. But when he met his master's deep eyes, he immediately shut up and ordered people to take the food away. Xiao Su sat in the study until the moon was high in the sky. When he received the news that she hadn't returned, he sat quietly for a moment. Then he raised his hand and the entire study returned to darkness. After washing up, Chu Qingyan sat in front of the dressing table and let Xining take off her hair ornaments. "Master, I just heard the servants in the main courtyard say that His Highness almost didn't touch his chopsticks at dinner." Although her master didn't say it as her personal maid, Xining could still sense that something was wrong between the two, so Xining pretended to mention it unintentionally. Chu Qingyan pursed her lips and said angrily, "Whether he eats or not, I don't care." Xining stuck out her tongue and didn't dare to say anything else. At this time, Mother Chu came in and said with a smile, "I just coaxed your father to sleep." Chu Qingyan stood up and thought of her father's reluctant look when she said she wanted to stay. She said a bit embarrassedly, "Your daughter has disturbed father and mother." "What nonsense are you saying?" Mother Chu patted her hand and turned to let Xining leave. Then she took her to lie down on the couch. In the room, the candlelight was flickering and the dim yellow light made people feel at ease. Kai, do you have something on your mind?" Mother Chu looked at her from the side with a gentle gaze. Chu Qingyan shook her head lightly. "No, why would Mother ask this? You gave Mother the feeling today, as if you were wronged outside and came back to seek protection." Chu Qingyan rubbed her head with a bitter expression. Was she that obvious? Kai, if you have something on your mind and want to tell Mother, then tell Mother. It's okay if you don't want to talk about it. My daughter has grown up and should have her own little secrets. Mother Chu was very understanding. Chu Qingyan's eyes watered and she nodded. After a moment, she bit her lip and asked, "Mother, when Father married you, did he think about taking in concubines?" "He wouldn't dare." Mother Chu's tone was slightly serious. Hearing this, Chu Qingyan was happy. Mother Chu knew that she had lost her composure in front of her daughter and smiled embarrassedly. "Before your father married me, he swore that he would only treat me well in this lifetime. How could he go back on his words?" Chu Qingyan was stunned. She thought that the concept of the ancient people was to have 3 wives and 4 concubines, but she didn't expect her parents to be so consistent. She said with some envy, "Mother, It's so good to have met father. Mother Chu rarely mentioned these things in front of her daughter, so she couldn't help but blush. His Highness treats you very well too. The most important thing is that the two of you live well. Her mother's words made her heart turn cold. She couldn't help but reach out and hug her mother with the attachment and confusion of a child. Mother, I'm a little scared. What are you scared of? I'm scared that one day, happiness is just the moon in the water and the flower in the mirror. When I wake up from my dream, it'll become an illusion. Silly child, don't be scared. Happiness is in your hands. As long as you work hard, you'll definitely grasp it tightly. Mother Chu didn't know where her worries came from. She could only pat her back and comfort her in a low voice. Happiness was like sand between the fingers. The more you clenched it, the easier it was to slip away. Chu Qingyan wanted to say something, but she couldn't resist the warmth and sleepiness at this moment and fell into a deep sleep. Chapter 780. Master, we haven't been able to contact our men. In the morning, Tan Ying stood in front of the dressing table and helped her master comb her hair. Sima Jun stroked the hair in front of her chest and looked at herself in the mirror. Her expression was calm. I'm afraid the other party is forcing them too much. They don't dare to show themselves easily. Master, do you know who's behind this? Tan Ying asked. She shook her head. There's no need to guess. Who else could it be other than Xing Ming? But wasn't Xing Ming punished by you to go to Jiang to repent? Tan Ying exclaimed. Sima Jun chuckled, but there was no smile in her eyes. Xing Ming has been eyeing the position of the head of Lan Manor for a long time. Although I broke his left and right arms 3 years ago and he restrained himself, I didn't expect that it was just a trap set up by him to make me relax. After going to Jiang, he can develop his power without restraint. Needless to say, there's someone in Lan Manor helping him from behind. That's why he could expand his power so quickly in just 3 years. Sima Jun frowned. I can't use Lan Ying now. We've lost contact with Yu Ying. If we can contact Red Ying, perhaps we won't be in such a passive situation. Tan Ying cursed Xing Ming for being a despicable person in her heart. She asked worriedly, but Red Ying probably still doesn't know that we met with trouble in Jiangnan. What should we do? Sima Jun was silent. Tan Ying's eyes brightened. Master, it's fine if we can't contact Yu Ying and Red Ying. We can try contacting Lord Ji. He still has Bai Ying. No! Sima Jun's expression was no longer calm. Her gaze was cold and her tone was stern. No matter who I ask for help, I won't ask Ji Linyang. But Lord Ji, before Tan Ying could finish speaking, Sima Jun interrupted her. Tan Ying was stunned. Master, Sima Jun felt that her reaction was a little too extreme. Her anger rose. She looked at Tan Ying's pale face and knew that her tone was a little harsh. She sighed. Tan Ying, I don't want to hear his name in the next few days. Tan Ying nodded weakly. In the past, her mistress and Lord Ji had galloped together on horseback, sharing prosperity. But now, they were like strangers. As her mistress's trusted aide, she still didn't understand how the two of them ended up like this. Tan Ying, if you have the energy, try and see if you can find a breakthrough in this house. Without me, who knows how much of Blue Manor will fall. There will be a lot of bloodshed when power changes. This is something I don't want to see, so we can't just sit here and wait for death. It was clearly early in the morning, but Sima Jun felt a little tired. Looking for a breakthrough? Why don't you ask me directly? Just as Tan Ying was about to agree, a bright voice that was like the first light of dawn pierced through the clouds and reached the chaotic world, causing everyone's eyes to light up. Although Tan Ying was a little flustered, she quickly looked at the person leaning against the door cautiously. She looked as if she could go into battle at any moment. When the voice fell, a trace of bewilderment flashed through Sima Jun's eyes. It wasn't because she was caught plotting in someone's house, but because she didn't notice the other party's appearance at all. She didn't know how much she had heard, but hearing her words, it seemed like she had heard most of it. Young Master Chu came really early. Have you eaten breakfast yet? Sima Jun stood up and asked gently. Chu Qingyan looked up at her. Seeing her nonchalant expression, he secretly admired her acting skills. In the blink of an eye, She was able to change the conversation from a mutual deception to a discussion about breakfast. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but sigh. I haven't eaten breakfast yet. After freshening up, I thought of Miss Sima and wondered if the servants were serving you well, so I came to take a look. We've suddenly come to disturb you and caused you a lot of trouble. We even have to make you worry about us. I'm really sorry. Sima Jun was also a very polite person. She flawlessly put on a show of harmony between the host and guest. Chu Qingyan smiled. You're too polite. I'm just lending a helping hand when I see injustice. Sima Jun also smiled. Then why don't you stay for breakfast with me and talk about the breakthrough? This was Sima Jun. She would drag you around when you were concentrating, and then kill you when you were relaxed. Chu Qingyan was startled at first, but then she smiled so widely that her eyes couldn't be seen. Then I'll accept your invitation. She woke up this morning because she didn't want to face the big block of ice, so she hid in the courtyard and finally came to the side courtyard. She wanted to see the woman who tried to seduce her with a honey trap yesterday, but she didn't expect to hear a good show outside the door. Although she didn't know much about the sex in the Jianghu, she had heard of this lawn manor that wandered between the imperial court and the Jianghu. After all, she had found those life-saving herbs through the lawn manor. She didn't know much about it, but at least she knew that there were several large organizations under the lawn manor. Among them were Shadow, Red Shadow, Purple Shadow, and White Shadow. What she said just now was enough to prove that the person in front of her was someone from the lawn manor. Although she didn't know her specific identity, she was at least an important decision-maker. Then it seemed that the information was true. After the two of them sat down, breakfast was served. Fragrant and soft porridge, tofu with vegetables, youtiao and soy milk, as well as green peppers with meat and other side dishes. Sima Jun had only glanced at the table, but her gaze was fixed on it. Your breakfast is a little familiar. Chu Qingyan didn't suspect anything. We usually eat this. Is it not to Miss Sima's taste? You can get the kitchen to prepare something else. It's fine, I didn't think it through. Sima Jun shook her head. No, it's the taste I like. Tanning smiled and said, our master also likes these in the residence. Us subordinates were also assimilated by our master. The two followed the rule of not talking while eating, and the atmosphere was quite harmonious as they finished their meal. After the meal was taken away, Chu Qingyan sipped her tea, quietly waiting for the other party to speak. Sima Jun was a little curious about Chu Qingyan. At such a young age, she was actually so calm. She didn't know if it was innate or if there was an expert guiding her from behind. However, there was no time for her to waste. Young master, I have something I need your help with. I wonder if it's possible? It's fine, Miss Sima. But before that, can you reveal Miss Sima's true identity? Chu Qingyan smiled lightly. Of course, but courtesy demands reciprocity. Shouldn't young Master Chu also reveal his identity? Oh no, I should call you Miss Sima Chu. Am I wrong? Her words made Chu Qingyan turn to look at her. Coincidentally, Sima Jun also turned to look at her, and the two of them met in midair. She was clear, calm, probing, and confident. Chu Qingyan suddenly smiled. Of course. She felt that she seemed to have met a well-matched opponent. Perhaps they could even become friends in the future. Chapter 781. When Sima Jun heard her agree so readily, a smile appeared in her eyes. She knew that the person in front of her was a man of his word. He wasn't playing Tai Chi with her. Sima Jun, founder of Lan Manor. Although Chu Qingyan was already mentally prepared, when she heard the truth, she couldn't help but tremble. Lan Manor? It actually came from a young woman like you. It's really unbelievable. Everything that had happened in Lan Manor was still vivid in Chu Qingyan's memory. Sima Jun shook her head and smiled. At that time, I just wanted to play around, but I didn't want to play too big. In the end, I just did it. Anyway, it's already been established. The things that I want to do can only develop in the right direction, so you know. If such shameless boasting came from someone else's mouth, Chu Qingyan might have snorted disdainfully. But the person in front of her could only make her sigh in admiration. Sima Jun looked like she was only 18 or 19 years old. Then when she founded Lan Manor, she was only a little over 10 years old. It was too scary. The people of this era couldn't be described as normal. I thought that in the eyes of the world, Lan Manor was just a small organization. Perhaps they didn't know. I wanted to explain it to you, but looking at you, you should have heard of it. That saves me the trouble of talking. Sima Jun supported her face with one hand and said with a smile. Chu Qingyan could not help but roll her eyes. Lan Zhuang's name alone was enough to scare the White Dao, all right? Ordinary people didn't know about it, so it was normal that they didn't know. But to the officialdom and Jianghu, this was equivalent to the leader of the gray area. It seemed to be involved in everything, but also seemed to be involved in nothing. Moreover, it had a way of accumulating wealth. It was elusive, and many political bosses who coveted it couldn't do anything about it. This was also the reason why Chu Qingyan admired her. When she heard Sima Jun's words, she really wanted to say, I don't mind you talking about Lan Manor. I seem to know about it. It's your turn. Sima Jun raised his chin. You look like a commoner, but you have a secret guard that many high-ranking officials and wealthy businessmen can only dream of. Tell me, which noble family are you from? Chu Qingyan felt that she had overestimated her. She rubbed her nose and smiled. Our Chu family is just a small, rundown family. My father has no official position, no wealth, and no power. My mother is also not the daughter of a high-ranking official. Oh, if you really want to talk about it, my father used to be a general in the Sichuan kingdom, but that was 15 years ago. Ah. Sima Jun was obviously stunned by her words. Then which sect are you from? I don't belong to any sect. That's not right. Where did he learn from? Are you a hermit expert? Neither. Sima Jun was stunned. Could it be that her information was wrong? Was she just a lucky girl? Then you wouldn't have gotten your martial arts skills for no reason, would you? Did your secret guards also fall from the sky? She still couldn't believe it. Chu Qingyan was amused. Then, she thought of something and her expression became a little gloomy. That's because I hooked up with a powerful and wealthy fiancé. Sima Jun looked like she suddenly realized something. Then, she said a little embarrassedly, It's fine, it's fine. It doesn't matter even if his family background is ordinary. Didn't I say that it's better to marry well than to be born well? You have so many secret guards by your side. It's obvious that your fiancé treats you well. This is enough to kill many people. Chu Qingyan smiled a little reluctantly. If she had heard these words a few days ago, she might have been very happy. But now, she felt very uncomfortable in her heart. Once you fell in love with someone, no matter how magnanimous a woman was, she would become greedy. She would want the other party to only have her in his eyes and in his heart. But in the modern era where one husband and one wife were single, even men couldn't do it. How could a man in ancient times who had 3 wives and 4 concubines be able to treat one person wholeheartedly? Sima Jun was able to pull Lan Manor from a small organization to the fearsome underground tyrant at a young age. It was all because of her keen eyesight, her ability to read people's minds, and her ability to observe people's expressions. At this time, when she saw Chu Qingyan's absent-minded look, she knew that she had said something wrong. She thought for a moment, then said, Then your fiancé is? Sichuan Kingdom's King of England, Xiao Su. Chu Qingyan also restrained her emotions at this time and said calmly. Sima Jun's eyes lit up. So you're Chu Qingyan? The King of England's little princess consort? Chu Qingyan was very surprised that she could directly call out her name. But then she thought about it. Lan Manor's intelligence network was spread all over the country. What's more, Big Ice Cube's status was not low. It was normal for this matter to be known. At this time, Sima Jun's emotions were surging. She didn't expect to casually pick up such a powerful thigh on the road. What was Xiao Su's background? Everyone knew about him. Even Sima Jun, who didn't participate in the imperial court, had heard of him. Especially the fierce cavalry under his command. That was a special force. If she could cooperate with Chu Qingyan, then there was hope for her to return to Lan Manor. Okay, I'm going to do this business. Chu Qingyan wanted to roll her eyes at Sima Jun's sudden words. How could this kind of thing be decided so unilaterally? Master Sima, aren't you a little too hasty? She just said her family's name. But Chu Qingyan didn't know that for Sima Jun, this family's name was enough. Ahem, little Qingyan, what I said just now was a little too hasty. Then let me be more serious. Sima Jun stretched out her right hand and smiled seriously. I, Sima Jun, as the master of the manor, propose to cooperate with you. If you can help me return to Lan Manor and severely punish the traitor, then if you need Lan Manor in the future, I, Sima Jun, will not refuse. After saying that, Sima Jun smiled from the tip of her eyebrows. She was both charming and immortal. Then, do you dare to accept? These words inexplicably ignited Chu Qingyan's fire. She liked this kind of equal cooperation, and not the ancient people who looked down on women. No matter what a woman did, there would always be gossip behind her back. This was also why she chose Hua Xiaoli as her partner. It was only because she admired such a woman who was not afraid of the world. She didn't expect to meet such a Sima Jun today. She was the type she yearned for. The answer was no surprise. Chu Qingyan also stretched out her right hand. When the two shook hands, both of them smiled. Chu Qingyan realized that this action seemed to be something that only existed in the modern era. It represented acquaintance, cooperation, and farewell. But soon, this thought flashed through her mind and disappeared. Sima Jun was not a wishy-washy person. When the two of them confirmed their cooperation, Sima Jun concisely explained the current situation to Chu Qingyan. Thus, the two of them began to discuss countermeasures. Chu Qingyan didn't know, because this decision would soon bring her a great surprise. At the same time, the Liang family's carriage arrived in Jiangnan. Chapter 782. Where is Ian right now? At this time, he was still eating breakfast alone. Xiao Su looked at the empty spot beside him and felt that the delicious food he normally ate had no appetite at all. Turin had gone out to handle some matters and Hua Ling was waiting on the side. He immediately replied when he heard, Little Princess Consort went to Miss Sima's courtyard. Ever since they had Little Princess Consort, Shaolai cavalry had another skill other than guarding the house. It was to keep track of Little Princess Consort's movements at all times. This was not a requirement of Master, but Master would ask about it every day, so Shaolai cavalry silently added this to their daily routine. Xiao Su's appetite became even worse after hearing this. It wasn't that he didn't know that Sima Jun had put on a show of marrying him in the room yesterday. Last night, he wanted to punish the little fellow a bit, but before he could speak, the little fellow had mysteriously run away. Now, he didn't want to see him. He was a bit angry. Shouldn't he be the one angry? Hua Ling knew that Master was not in a good mood today, but seeing him put down the bowl after a few bites, he couldn't help worrying, Master, you've eaten too little for the past 2 meals. I'm full from anger. Hua Ling wanted to say something, but was choked back by these words. It was rare to see Master reveal his emotions like this, so he didn't know what to say for a while. Hua Ling felt that ever since Master had a Little Princess Consort by his side 5 years ago, he had walked down from the altar and was tainted with the scent of the mortal world. But even if he was angry with Little Princess Consort, he shouldn't go on a hunger strike. Wasn't this a little too much? It didn't match the mighty Master in his impression at all. But Hua Ling only dared to curse in his heart. Xiao Su didn't even look at the food as he had people take it away. He turned and went to the study. He needed to calm down right now. When Chu Qingyan and Sima Jun finished talking, a feeling of regret that they hadn't met earlier lingered in his heart. This feeling didn't just come from the tacit understanding they had, it also came from the fact that they could think of the same plan. I have 20 to 30 people with me. Basically, I can send them out to cover your return. Chu Qingyan did not even blink as she handed over all the people she had on hand. But if you give me all the people around you, who will protect you? Don't tell me you don't intend to ask your fiancé for help? Although Sima Jun was very happy with Chu Qingyan's loyalty, he was somewhat puzzled. Chu Qingyan raised her eyebrows. Didn't you just want someone to protect you from those minions? It's troublesome to have too many people. It's best to travel on light horses, so I have enough people. Besides, we women can't lose our status. We can't always rely on men for everything, right? Sima Jun nodded approvingly. I like the sound of that. Chu Qingyan's eyes curved into crescents. Then when are you leaving? Let's tentatively set it for 3 days later. However, I hope that you can lend me a few people in the next few days. I want to contact my people first. No problem. After resolving the major matter in his heart, Sima Jun's temperament had become much more relaxed. He did not even hold back when speaking and became much more intimate with Chu Qingyan. Everything that happened here was not hidden from Xiao Su. He snorted heavily. It seemed that he had picked up another rotten peach blossom. One after another came, but he could not chase them away. The previous one was like that, and this one was also like that. However, Xiao Su did not know that his 2 rotten peach blossoms were about to enter his door. May I ask how to get to the Chu residence? 3 very unobtrusive carriages appeared on the streets of Jiangnan. The coachman on the carriage was asking the passers-by. Which Chu family are you asking about? The passers-by asked. Chu Yan. He's a businessman. The coachman immediately replied. Oh, that handsome young man you're talking about. I know. Follow this road to the end and then turn right to the 3rd house. There are guards at the door and it's different from other houses. In any case, you'll know when you get there. The passers-by was in a hurry to get there. After saying that, he waved his hand and left. The coachman returned to the carriage and explained the location to the people in the carriage. Then, he drove the carriage in the direction the passers-by had pointed out. In the spacious carriage sat 2 beautiful girls. They were about the same age and their beautiful faces were somewhat similar. It was not difficult to tell that they were a pair of beautiful sisters. It's so strange. Why did eldest cousin use the Chu residence and not the Xiao residence? The passers-by's voice was not soft. Everyone in the carriage heard him. The impatient Liang Danbing could not help but ask her sister sitting beside her. The butterfly hairpins tassels on her head swayed because of her movements, as if they were about to fly up. It made her seem playful and lively. Only the imperial family can use the surname Xiao in this world. Eldest cousin came to Jiangnan in private. It's not good to make a big fuss about it. Otherwise, it will attract attention. Liang Danjing was like her name. She was as quiet as water and had an otherworldly temperament. At a glance, one could tell that she came from a noble family. Her appearance was gentle and generous. However, when she spoke, her eyes were cold. In fact, it was not important to use the surname of the residence. However, that person was eldest cousin. The person who was rumored to not be blasphemed by anyone actually used Chu Qingyan's surname. This represented the position this person held in eldest cousin's heart. However, using the surname Chu is also surprising. Liang Danbing looked simple, but how could someone who lived in the inner courtyard of a large residence and in the circle of rich and famous people be like a blank piece of paper? Younger sister, what do you want to say? Liang Danjing looked at her with a trace of doubt in her eyes. Liang Danbing curled her lips slightly and her expression was somewhat cold. Chu Qingyan is only born in a poor family. What right does she have to sit in the position of the King of England's consort? Eldest cousin can treat her differently only because no other woman has appeared by his side. Look at her arrogance. When the time comes, I will definitely trample her into the mud. This did not seem like something a noble family's daughter should say. Liang Danjing disagreed and said, Younger sister, be careful with your words. She knew that her younger sister had been influenced by the nannies sent by Auntie these days. They were afraid of eldest cousin, who they had only met a few times. When they heard about Auntie and father's decision, they resisted at first. However, the nannies said that if they could capture eldest cousin's heart or occupy a position by his side, then in the future, whether it was themselves or the Liang family, it would bring unparalleled glory. The Liang family was the nation's mother's maiden family and belonged to the faction of the first prince. If the emperor died 100 years later, then the throne. In the end, the 2 young ladies took the initiative to accept. Who didn't want to be the most noble woman in the world? Older sister, there are no outsiders here. You don't have to worry about being overheard. Moreover, Auntie is very attentive to us. Not only did she send several nannies, she also sent guards from the palace to escort us. Do you really think that these people are only there to protect us? Liang Danbing gave her a displeased look and blinked innocently as she asked. After Liang Danjing heard this, she smiled with understanding. How could she not know that these people were sent by Auntie to deal with Chu Qingyan? After not seeing each other for 5 years, she did not know how Chu Qingyan had changed. She was somewhat looking forward to it. Chapter 783. When the Liang family's beautiful sisters arrived, Xiao Su was reviewing documents in the study. Unfortunately, because of his irritation, he couldn't read a single word. Master, the Liang family's people are here. Hualing ran in a flurry. Xiao Su didn't even raise his head. Isn't it just a few people? Why are you in such a rush? Hualing rubbed his head. Wasn't he just worried about Master? Then Master, they're already in the guest hall. Do you want to see them? Even though he didn't like the Liang family, especially this kind of person who dared to ruin the relationship between Master and the little princess, he didn't like them from the bottom of his heart. However, out of courtesy, he felt that Master should go through the motions. Hualing, whose fu is this? Xiao Su didn't reply and asked a question instead. Hualing didn't understand. The Chu fu in name, it's the little princess. When he said this, Hualing didn't continue because he had an epiphany. So you have to ask the owner of this fu and not this Wang. Xiao Su glanced at him indifferently. Hualing shivered and immediately bowed. This subordinate will go find the little princess right now. The child is worth teaching. It was rare for Xiao Su to praise him. Hualing giggled as he turned to go find the person. Chu Qingyan had just come out of the side yard when she met Hualing, who was looking for her. Little princess, the Liang family's people are here. Liang family? These 2 words dragged Chu Qingyan from her good mood into the cold winter snow. She didn't forget that the Liang family's people were sent by Empress Liang to cultivate their relationship with the big ice cube. Even though her heart was in turmoil, she still had to maintain a good demeanor in front of her subordinates. Oh, they're here. Chu Qingyan wanted to leave after answering. Hualing stopped her. Little princess, aren't you going to take a look? Why should I go? If I disturb His Highness and the beauty's intimate moment, wouldn't I be a sinner? Chu Qingyan said indifferently. Hualing knew she was jealous and secretly laughed in his heart. He did not show it on his face as he said, but Master said you are the master of this manor, so you should be the one receiving the guests. Chu Qingyan was already unhappy. When she heard this, she felt even more uncomfortable. This house is mine on the surface, but he's the one who paid for it. Tell him to entertain the guests himself. I'm not free. Hualing blinked and immediately turned around to convey these words to his master without missing a single word. Xiao Su tapped his fingers on the table as he listened. Then he said something and asked Hualing to pass on the message. Chu Qingyan had yet to enter her courtyard when Hualing ran over while huffing and puffing. Little princess consort, Master said that you are the mistress of this house. If there are guests, you have the right and responsibility to greet them. Hualing said without missing a single word. Chu Qingyan's heart turned cold. Was Big Ice Cube determined for her to come out? The main wife entertaining the concubine? That was the first thing she thought of. Little princess consort, are you all right? Hualing originally wanted to watch the play because it had always been his master being jealous without the little princess noticing. Now that he finally saw the little princess being jealous, when he saw her pale face, he immediately calmed himself down and asked this worriedly. Chu Qingyan took a deep breath. Since she would have to face them sooner or later, she might as well directly meet these people. She sorted out her mood and said without any emotion, "Let's go. We can't be rude." Hualing nodded in a daze. When Hualing was passing the message back and forth, the Liang family sisters had already drunk no less than 3 cups of tea. What happened? The person who passed on the message won't be coming back. Liang Danbing heavily put down the teacup with an unhappy expression. Although Liang Danjing did not say anything, her face was clearly not good. After all, she had been ruthlessly attacked by others, so no one would feel good. His Highness might be busy. Mama Hong comforted her from the side. Liang Danbing immediately said with a smile, Mama Hong, Danbing also knows that His Highness is busy, but Big Sister Chu is also the mistress of this place. No matter how busy she is, she still hasn't come out. This is a bit unreasonable. Even if us sisters are of the same generation as her, we shouldn't lose face for the Liang family. Second young miss is right. This ninth young Miss Chu is too rude. However, the Empress sent this old servant over this time for a mission, which is to teach ninth young Miss Chu court etiquette. When the time comes, this old servant will properly teach her. Mama Zheng's eyes were strict. When she spoke of Chu Qingyan, her voice was filled with disdain and disdain. The other two Mama nodded in agreement. The Liang family sisters looked at each other and saw the smiles in each other's eyes. The conversation inside, not a single word fell into Chu Qingyan's ears. Because she was a martial artist, her footsteps were light, so the people inside did not notice her. Chu Qingyan secretly thought. It seemed like these people were hot potatoes. Not only the Liang family sisters, there were also the Mama from the palace. This was simply a disaster for her. She deliberately slowed down her footsteps. When the people inside heard this, they no longer spoke. She curled her lips into a graceful smile. Then she stepped through the door and was met with dozens of unfriendly gazes. Chu Qingyan did not care as she looked at the two young girls sitting there. With just one look, Chu Qingyan could not help being shocked. As expected, they were rare beauties. I am Chu Qingyan. When I was listening to the servant's report, I was in a hurry and did not have time to change my clothes. I ask for everyone's forgiveness. Her lips still had a decent smile. When she saw the other side's shock at her appearance, she guessed that it was because she had not changed out of her male clothing. She had planned on changing out of it, but it was a pity that Huoling's message had delayed her a lot of time, so she had to rush over first. As soon as her words fell, she received quite a few disdainful gazes. Chu Qingyan did not care. Actually, when Chu Qingyan walked in, everyone's eyes lit up. This was because the person in front of them was just too handsome. It was rare to see such a handsome youth in the capital, but after she explained her identity, they were all shocked. This was because no one would have thought that the little bean sprout-like person from the past would turn into a butterfly in just 5 years. After hearing this, a person wearing a large white lotus flower pink dress revealed a beautiful neck. The dress flowed down as she stood up and the light flowed like a lotus in the water. She took 2 steps forward and slightly bowed to Chu Qingyan as she said, "So it's Big Sister Chu. This one is called Liang Danjing and this is my little sister, Liang Danbing." After she finished speaking, another woman dressed in a light yellow flowery dress slowly walked over. The butterfly hairpin on her head swayed back and forth, making her look extremely cute and playful. She followed Liang Danjing and bowed. Danbing greets elder sister Chu. The two of them were very polite. Even if Chu Qingyan knew what their goal was, she could only greet them with a smile. "So it's my 2 cousins. No need to be polite, please sit. Chu Qingyan raised her hand to support them. The two of them stood up and the smiles on their faces dazzled Chu Qingyan's eyes. They were truly a pair of beautiful sisters. Chapter 784. Chu Qingyan called for them to sit down. Just as they sat down, a sharp voice sounded. "Ninth young Miss Chu, these old servants were sent to Jiangnan by Her Highness the Empress." Nanny Hong stood out and slightly bowed as she spoke with a mocking expression. As soon as she finished speaking, the other 2 nannies also came forward and bowed as they introduced themselves. Chu Qingyan smiled as she looked at the 3 palace nannies standing in front of her. One look and she knew that they were not easy to get along with. She had already seen them earlier, but she automatically ignored them because of their high and mighty faces. Empress Liang didn't like her, but she endured this anger because she was the mother of the big ice cube. However, it didn't mean that these people could also step on her head. She seemed to have just learned of their identities and said with a bit of surprise, "Nannies, please rise. You are all old servants of Her Highness. Is it too much for Qingyan to be so courteous?" Nanny Hong said that although Chu Qingyan and Xiao Su hadn't officially married, their status was there. They should kneel and pay their respects. Unfortunately, They relied on their status in the palace and only bowed. They originally wanted to give Chu Qingyan a show of strength, but they didn't expect her to say this. Their expressions didn't look too good. After saying this, Chu Qingyan turned her attention to the two cousins and automatically ignored the nannies. Third cousin, fourth cousin, you must be tired from the journey. How about I arrange a room for you to rest first? When night comes, we can have dinner together as a welcome dinner. Chu Qingyan said very warmly. Liang Danjing smiled gently, then we'll have to trouble Big Sister Chu. You're welcome. Big Sister Chu, why don't I see eldest cousin? Does he not know that we're here? Liang Danbing asked curiously from the side. Little sister. Liang Danjing glanced at her. Liang Danbing pouted and said mischievously, I just haven't seen eldest cousin in a long time and miss him. Moreover, didn't Aunt ask us to visit eldest cousin on her behalf? Tell me, am I right, Big Sister Chu? As Liang Danbing spoke, she turned to Chu Qingyan. Chu Qingyan raised her head and was met with Liang Danbing's mocking expression. On the other hand, Liang Danjing raised her hand and tugged at her younger sister's hand, seemingly disapproving. However, Chu Qingyan could see the indifference in her eyes from the corner of her eyes. Although they were beautiful sisters, they were also sisters with thorns. Chu Qingyan left aside the few mamas felt very uncomfortable. In the palace, which one of them wasn't the object of flattery? Here, Chu Qingyan didn't serve them well and even let them stand. This was simply too much. At this time, Liang Danbing threw out a tactful rebuke, and the few nannies also had a good reason to attack. Ninth Miss Chu, the two cousins have come to Jiangnan from afar. You'd better inform them. If His Highness asks about it, you won't be able to explain it, right? Mammy Jing said first. Nanny Hong added, although ninth young Miss Chu is the princess consort of Ing appointed by the retired emperor himself, she is not the princess consort of Ing yet. It's better if you don't make decisions on your own regarding Miss Gu. Granny Li, who was standing at the side, also stood up and sized Chu Qingyan up. Her eyes were filled with disdain as she said, Ninth young Mistress Chu, you are also a lady from a respectable family. No matter what, you should not be dressed as a man in public. What's more, you are greeting guests. Chu Qingyan felt that these people's chatter was really annoying. They didn't even give her a chance to speak. Sure enough, 3 women could make a play. They didn't need the protagonist, but they could still sing. What's more, there were more than 3 people here. Ever since the Liang clan's beautiful sisters brought up the topic, they did not speak again. They were classic examples of watching from the sidelines. Chu Qingyan laughed in her heart. They were probably waiting to see how she would react so that they could take action against her in the future. After the few of them had finished their act, Chu Qingyan finally spoke up leisurely. Just now, the guard first informed His Highness, but His Highness is busy with official business. You know, His Highness is a typical workaholic. Everything must be solved on the same day when it comes to him, so he asked me to come out and greet you. If I don't treat you well, you can mention it to His Highness. I believe His Highness's hospitality will be more satisfactory. After he finished speaking, the faces of the people in the hall turned pale. They just wanted to find fault with Chu Qingyan and embarrass her. They didn't expect that she would mention His Highness and ask His Highness to greet them. At that time, several ministers wanted to please His Royal Highness who returned from a victory. They brought a lot of congratulatory gifts, but they were all thrown out of the mansion by the guard. So, they wanted His Royal Highness to entertain them. Did they want to die? Seeing that they were silent, Chu Qingyan picked up the teacup on the table, tapped the lid of the teacup, and smiled gently. Then her eyes fell on Mama Hong. Although His Highness and I are not married, the retired emperor's words are like gold and jade. His Majesty personally wrote the edict to be the concubine of the King of England. There are no other women in the inner yard. As the hostess, it seems reasonable for me to come out and greet you. Mama Hong knew that she had made a mistake just now, and she looked embarrassed. Chu Qingyan chuckled and turned to Nanny Li. This is not the inner courtyard, and it is not considered rude to the ladies. Furthermore, His Highness has never objected to my attire. Nanny, aren't you being too nosy? She meant that His Highness didn't care. Did she want to overshadow His Highness? She was offending her superiors. Mama Li knew that what she did was wrong and violated the precepts for women, but she didn't know how to refute. She could only suffer in silence. Chu Qingyan didn't look at their reactions. She bowed her head and tasted the tea. There was a faint cold light in her eyes. She dared to play tricks in front of me. She was tired of living. Liang Danjing saw that even the arrogant mamas were rendered speechless by Chu Qingyan. She couldn't help but take this lowly girl seriously. She couldn't help but admit that she felt that this person would be a hindrance to them, a huge hindrance. However, since they were already in Jiangnan, she would be the Minister of Defense in the future. Liang Danbing's gaze landed on Chu Qingyan and the other nannies, and she smiled coldly. Then, she said childishly, since big cousin is busy with work, let's not disturb him. Anyway, we will be able to see him during dinner tonight. Then, we will pass on aunt's concern to him then. We have been here for a few months already, and there is no need to rush. As soon as these words came out, several mamas also echoed a few words. Chu Qingyan looked at Liang Danbing, who was smiling brightly, and couldn't help but smile. Her words had incited everyone to attack Chu Qingyan. Of course, it was also because the old servants wanted to use this as a pretext to make a fuss. Chu Qingyan's words were also used as a pretext. She was indeed from the Liang family. She didn't know whether she was really lively and cheerful or... Chapter 785. After walking for such a long time, even if the carriages and horses were of the best quality, they were still delicate girls. After a few words, they showed signs of fatigue. Chu Qingyan arranged for the servants to take them down to rest. After they left the hall, Chu Qingyan relaxed the tension in her heart and body. Her expression was a little lazy as she leaned against the back of the chair. Although she didn't like the fact that Empress Liang sent people over, this was the ancient times. Chu Qingyan could understand the feelings of parents wanting their children to have children. She wouldn't blame them, but what made her heart cold was the Big Ice Cube's attitude. She originally thought that he would casually reject them like he usually did when his subordinates sent people over. But this time, his ambiguous approach made her heart uneasy. She felt that dealing with these people was more tiring than fighting with others. Because she represented the Big Ice Cube, she didn't receive these people on the surface, but the power behind them. Whether it was Empress Liang or the Liang family, she could ignore them, but she could not consider the Big Ice Cube. After so long, she felt a little tired. Xining, who was standing on the side, saw everything. When she looked at her master, her expression was distressed. "Master, are you not feeling well?" "No, I probably didn't sleep well last night." Chu Qingyan pinched the space between her eyebrows and smiled indifferently. Xining pursed her lips and asked cautiously, "When you saw the two misses, did your heart—" Her unfinished words made Chu Qingyan smile lightly. "Xining, do you feel that your master is very pitiful?" Xining quickly waved her hand to deny it. "Master, what are you thinking? How could this servant think that?" Chu Qingyan raised her hand and knocked her forehead. "I'm just teasing you. You really can't take a scare. Look at how timid you are." Xining sighed and then looked at her with complaint. "Master, you're always bullying me." But seeing her master smile, Xining was relieved. How could she not know what Xining was thinking? Chu Qingyan's smile couldn't help but fade a little. It turned out that she had become someone who even worried about the people around her. How uncute. She gently tugged at the corner of her mouth and concealed her expression. Then she stood up as if the self-deprecating smile just now did not exist. "Mistress, where are you going?" Xining followed her. Chu Qingyan raised her eyebrows and said, "Go to the kitchen and tell them about the dinner. Don't we have guests at home? Just let this servant run errands for you." Xining volunteered. Chu Qingyan shook her head and smiled. "You don't understand. There are some things that I have to do personally." Xining puffed up her cheeks and was a little confused. When she left, she realized that her master did not want others to talk about her. Thinking about it, this kind of master would be very tired. There were already enough business matters for her master to worry about. She really hoped that the two cousins would quickly go back. Chu Qingyan had just left when she saw Hualing waiting at the door. She raised her eyebrows. His Highness sent you over? But the two cousins have already gone to rest and are living in the west wing of the side courtyard. After she finished speaking, Chu Qingyan felt as though she was suffocating in her chest. Hualing smiled and shook his head. Little princess, this subordinate is looking for you. Master wants you to go to the study after you're done entertaining the guests. That sigh of relief was suddenly released. Chu Qingyan felt that she was making a big fuss over a minor issue, but when she thought of the two delicate cousins, her heart felt a little sour. Did he say what it was about? Master did not say anything about this. Understood. I'm going to the kitchen first and will be there in a bit. Chu Qingyan nodded. Hualing did not immediately leave and pretended to casually say, "AI, Master has been eating so little these past few meals. I don't know if it's because the food in the kitchen is not to your liking or something else." Chu Qingyan's footsteps paused before she calmly continued walking. Hualing snickered and then happily walked back while whistling. When they arrived at the kitchen maids immediately stopped what they were doing and respectfully bowed to Chu Qingyan. Everyone had a sincere smile on their faces. These kitchen maids were all recruited by Chu Qingyan from the local area. She did not have the arrogant attitude of a rich family, and she was very understanding and approachable. Thus, all the servants in the residence liked her very much. Chu Qingyan waved her hand to let them go back to work. Then she said a few words to Manager Chen, especially the food for the two cousins and tonight's banquet. Manager Chen was a woman around 30 years old, so she agreed to everything after hearing it. When Chu Qingyan had her prepare the ingredients, Manager Chen said with a smile, "The eldest young master hasn't touched his breakfast yet. Is it not to his liking?" These words were similar to what Hualing had said before. Chu Qingyan couldn't help feeling annoyed. Why were the two of them speaking the same way? He wasn't a little child. If he didn't eat, then he wouldn't eat. If he was hungry, then wouldn't he eat? But from the smile in Manager Chen's eyes, it was clear that the young couple was at odds with each other. Chu Qingyan felt that it was too dazzling. She couldn't blame Manager Chen for thinking this because in this palace, the eldest young master was cold to everyone. Only this master in front of her was not normal. The two of them were like jade, and they looked very pleasing to the eye when they stood together. It was also because Chu Qingyan did not put on any airs that Manager Chen dared to ask. Chu Qingyan knew that they were concerned, so she said with a smile, "Don't worry, it might be that he's been too busy recently, so he hasn't had time to eat. Just do your own things and don't worry about anything else." Manager Chen nodded and left. Chu Qingyan let out a sigh of relief. She wanted to turn and leave the kitchen, but her ears were filled with Big Ice Cube's words about how little he ate. She shook her head and then stopped in her tracks. "Is there something else Master needs?" Xining poked her head out from behind her and asked in a confused voice, "Is there red and green beans in the kitchen?" Although the kitchen maids were confused by her master's sudden question, they still nodded. "There are peanuts and other things." "Does Master want to make 8 treasure kanji?" Chu Qingyan nodded. "Is it for His Highness?" Manager Chen walked out at this time while wiping her hands. She had a smile on her face. Chu Qingyan gave a light cough. "I'm hungry." "This servant understands." Manager Chen agreed with a smile, then said to the kitchen maids behind her, "Prepare 2 portions. Quickly go wash the rice and cook the kanji. Don't let our masters starve." Manager Chen purposely emphasized her tone for the sake of 2 people. The kitchen maids understood tacitly and smiled as they busied themselves. Chu Qingyan's face heated up. "Really, these people?" She stomped her feet and walked out of the kitchen. Xining followed behind, covering her mouth as she snickered, then strode forward to catch up. "Master, don't walk so fast. This servant can't keep up." No matter when and what happened, once the other party was involved, she would immediately abandon all conflicts, dissatisfaction, and grievances and put her heart and soul in front of him. This was deep love. Chapter 786. When Chu Qingyan came to the study, Hualing was already waiting at the door. He personally opened the door for her, and when he bowed, he said in a low voice, "Little Princess Fei, Master's mood doesn't seem very good." Towards Hua Ling's kind reminder, Chu Qingyan couldn't help rolling her eyes. She was also in a bad mood, so who could she tell? But since it was the matter and not the person, Chu Qingyan still nodded to show she understood. Taking a deep breath, she walked in. When Chu Qingyan appeared at the door, Xiao Su already knew. But when she came in, he picked up a book and pretended to be seriously reading it. "Big Ice Cube, what are you looking for me for?" The moment Chu Qingyan entered the room, she saw that Jiang Yi was calm and composed. She was furious. She had been putting on a one-man show for the past 2 days, and she had been sulking on her own. He, on the other hand, was eating, drinking, and sleeping as usual. He was not affected at all. She really could not take this lying down. Xiao Su heard her stiff tone and frowned, but he didn't probe further. Has the Liang family's people been arranged? Sometimes, no matter how high one's intelligence was, in front of the person they liked, it was useless. So Xiao Su, who was lacking in EQ, made a very bad start and stepped on a firecracker. "So it's because you're thinking about the 2 biomais of the Liang family. They came from afar and are guests. How could I dare neglect them? They are also girls that your imperial mother carefully picked out, so I can't wait to warmly entertain them." Chu Qingyan felt her heart turn cold. She stared at him and snorted insincerely. This was the first time he had heard her speak to him in such a tone. Xiao Su had been ignored by her for the past 2 days and his mood wasn't very good. Hearing this, his eyes darkened. "I'm just asking a question. Why are you acting so strange?" "I'm acting strange?" Chu Qingyan pointed at herself and fiercely threw down her sleeve. "Am I wrong? Don't think I don't know what you're thinking? Let me tell you, I hate people who say one thing but do another. If you really want to." Chu Qingyan opened her mouth to say the word concubine, but she couldn't bring herself to say it. "What do you want? Why don't you tell me? Didn't you say you knew what I was thinking? Why don't you continue?" Xiao Su was also annoyed by her nonsensical words, and his tone couldn't help but become colder. He wanted to find a reason to let her talk to him in the study, but she complained first. He didn't know what she was talking about, and he felt a headache coming on. But after he said this, before she could continue, he saw her bright eyes turn red bit by bit, and finally, they were filled with tears. Xiao Su was slightly stunned. He immediately stood up and wanted to reach out to pull her in front of him for a closer look, but she stepped back and avoided him. Xiao Su's expression immediately darkened. "What are you doing?" Chu Qingyan became even angrier when she heard this. "Are you saying that I'm being unreasonable?" Xiao Su didn't answer. Clearly, this silence made her even more embarrassed and angry. Okay, I'm being unreasonable. This is a girl's right. You can't control it. You don't have to control me. I don't need you to control me." Chu Qingyan bit her lip and forced the tears back into her eyes. She didn't know how much this action hurt the person in front of her. Xiao Su originally wanted to wash his hands and ignore her, but when he saw her like this, the anger that had just risen was instantly extinguished. In love, many times a girl would complain in her heart, "Why don't you understand me?" And in the eyes of a boy, "Why is she crying again?" In fact, this was because in addition to the gender difference between men and women, it was also because of the different brain circuits between men and women. Therefore, lovers often bickered because they didn't understand what they were thinking. Xiao Su rubbed his eyebrows. He was used to the little girl being sensible and obedient and doing everything properly. Now, she looked as if she had been greatly wronged. Like a red-eyed rabbit, stubborn and pitiful, he didn't know where to start. If she was bullied by others, the little girl would definitely be able to bully back. If she couldn't, he could secretly help her get back at them. However, the person in front of him was himself. Xiao Su was a little helpless. What did he say or do wrong? He reflected on what he had just said. He had just casually mentioned it, but the little girl was like a firecracker that was ignited in an instant. On the other hand, Chu Qingyan secretly wiped the corners of her eyes and silently cursed in her heart. She was already so sad, but the big ice cube didn't even say a word of comfort. It was really too disappointing. The more Chu Qingyan thought about it, the angrier she became. Even her eyes were filled with fire as she looked at him. Just as the two of them were thinking, there was a knock on the door. Following that, they heard Xining's voice from outside. "Master, the 8 treasures porridge for His Highness is here. Should I bring it in?" They were quarreling at this time. Why did the kitchen come to join in the fun? When she raised her head, she met the big ice cube's smiling gaze. Chu Qingyan was angry and embarrassed. "That's what I want to eat. Who said it was for others? Bring it back to the courtyard. I'll go back later." "Oh," Xining hurriedly replied. When she turned around, Xining whispered to herself, but when the kitchen said to prepare 2 portions, Master didn't stop them. How strange. What kind of people were Xiao Su and Chu Qingyan? They didn't need to make any effort to hear this little bit of sound clearly. Chu Qingyan had the heart to dig a hole in the ground. She wasn't afraid of a godlike opponent, but she was afraid of a pig-like teammate. The courage that she had gathered with great difficulty to face the big ice cube dissipated at this time because of these words. Chu Qingyan stomped her feet and planned to turn around and leave. But just as she took a step, her wrist was grabbed. Chu Qingyan turned around and glared at the person behind her. "Why are you grabbing me? I'm hungry, I want to eat." Xiao Su raised his eyebrows. "If you're hungry, eat here. It saves time and effort." "I don't want to be with you." Chu Qingyan struggled in a fit of pique, trying to break free from his restraint. Xiao Su raised his other hand and stroked her head. He said gently, "Stop fooling around. Let's talk after we eat." "I don't want to talk to you. Don't think too highly of yourself." Chu Qingyan harumphed. Xiao Su knew that she didn't mean what she said. He curved his lips and didn't reply to her. Instead, he said to the people outside, "Bring it in." Xining didn't go far. When she heard this, she responded loudly and cheerfully pushed the door open to enter. The moment she entered, she met with 2 different gazes. Her master's eyes were filled with deep resentment, and His Highness's, refreshing gaze. It was the first time she saw His Highness smile so warmly at her. Xining couldn't help but shiver. She swallowed her saliva and quickly put down the tray. After arranging the bowls and chopsticks, she immediately slipped away. This must be a place of trouble. It was better for her to go somewhere cool. Chapter 787. Xiao Su glanced at the steaming big bowl of 8 treasure porridge on the table and said with a half smile, "Can you finish such a big bowl?" "None of your business." Chu Qingyan had already flung his hand away before Xining came in and sat down. Actually, she had no appetite at all at this moment. Looking at such a big bowl was really giving her a headache. Xiao Su laughed. "Didn't you eat quite a lot for lunch?" Chu Qingyan turned around and glared at the person sitting beside her. "It must be the servant who told you too much." Xiao Su didn't say anything. Even if it wasn't the servant who told her too much, he knew clearly what she ate for her 3 meals a day and how much she ate. However, he didn't need to tell her these things. When he didn't say anything, Chu Qingyan remembered that the two of them were still quarreling and immediately turned her head away angrily. Out of sight, out of mind. At this moment, she heard the sound of porcelain clinking and couldn't help but turn her head back again. She saw him holding a spoon to scoop the porridge again. Her gaze fell on the hand holding the spoon. His joints were well-defined, slender, and well-proportioned. No matter which angle she looked at it from, it could be said to be perfect. In a flash, a bowl full of porridge appeared in front of her. "Eat it while it's hot." At this moment, Chu Qingyan was still feeling uncomfortable. How could she be seduced by beauty? She was sulking at herself. "I'm not eating. Eat it yourself." With that, Xiao Su smiled faintly. "Didn't you say that you wanted to eat it yourself?" Chu Qingyan wished she could bite off her own tongue. Xiao Su laughed and shook his head. He took the bowl and stirred the porridge with the spoon. After letting out some steam, he scooped up a spoonful and handed it to a certain angry little rabbit. Chu Qingyan stared blankly at the piping hot porridge in front of her. She couldn't help but shift her gaze to him. She opened her mouth but didn't know what to say. At this moment, Xiao Su reached forward and fed it to her. "Try it and see how it tastes." Chu Qingyan put it in her mouth and thought gloomily, "It's all the same taste." Before she could eat it, she saw the person in front of her using the spoon just now to take a bite. She couldn't help but widen her eyes. The texture is not bad. Xiao Su nonchalantly scooped another spoonful and brought it back to her. Chu Qingyan was embarrassed. I'm not going to eat your saliva. Xiao Su didn't think much of it. Don't you eat a lot? He was referring to their usual kisses. A blush spread to Chu Qingyan's cheeks. It was really hot. Seriously, weren't they quarreling? Why did the style suddenly change? Xiao Su could not take his eyes off her rosy cheeks. He suddenly felt that the sweet porridge was a little tasteless. It was not as good as her. He coughed softly to conceal the thoughts that had emerged in his mind and turned to eat the porridge. She looked up and saw his serious face. Chu Qingyan felt powerless, as if she had used all her strength to hit cotton. She had been talking for a long time, but he didn't understand a single thing. It's nothing. Eat the porridge, it's getting cold. She felt that she no longer had any fighting spirit at the moment. Xiao Su slightly raised his eyebrows. He wanted to ask what was going on, but seeing her reach out to help him ladle a bowl of porridge in front of him, he couldn't help but think that the little fellow had finally calmed down, so it was better not to provoke her. There were some things that didn't have to be pursued to the end. He could investigate it himself. So he moved the bowl and lowered his head to eat. Chu Qingyan saw that he finally started to eat, and the stone in her heart was put down. She stirred the bowl of porridge in front of her from time to time, but her gaze fell on the person in front of her. This kind of person who could take out a white porcelain spoon to look like a jade pearl. As long as he took off his mask and revealed his true appearance to the world, there would definitely be countless women willing to follow him. Not to mention his status, just his side profile was enough to move people's hearts. She looked at his hand. It was slender like bamboo. He could hold a pen, a sword, and even the way he held a spoon was so elegant. Chu Qingyan was dazzled and her thoughts drifted away. The Liang family's two sisters had outstanding looks and proper manners. They were the type that men liked. Chu Qingyan thought in her heart. This Empress Liang had a good plan. No matter which type the big ice block liked, one was more quiet and one was more active. There would always be one type that would be satisfied. Her heart once again felt bitter. Chapter 788. After the two of them finished their porridge, Chu Qingyan propped up her chin with one hand and said hatefully to him, "Don't think that I'll be soft-hearted just because you're on a hunger strike. Let me tell you, my heart is as cold and hard as a rock." After saying this, Chu Qingyan made a face at him with her teeth bared. Who said that a woman in love would lose her IQ? This was a classic example. Xiao Su tried hard to hold back his laughter. There was no one else who could be so duplicitous. Although he found it funny, he still had to make a statement. "I'm not on a hunger strike." Chu Qingyan obviously didn't believe him. "Liar." Xiao Su explained, "It's just that I don't have much of an appetite because you're not here." Chu Qingyan snorted. "Do you mean that I have the ability to whet your appetite? I think you can be described as a feast for the eyes, but you can say that if you want." Xiao Su spread his hands. Chu Qingyan's face heated up. Oh no, she was being teased again. Big ice block, that's enough. Indeed, Xiao Su was teasing her like this because he was full. Seeing her revealing her usual shy look, his heart couldn't help but itch. Chu Qingyan knew that she couldn't win against him at this time, so she stood up with a whoosh and looked down at him. Actually, with his height, they could only look at each other at the same level at this time. "Tonight, I'm going to hold a welcoming dinner for your two cousins. Don't forget to attend. Otherwise, they'll think that I don't want you to see them and hide you." "You're so big, how can I hide you?" Chu Qingyan turned to leave after saying this, leaving Xiao Su deep in thought. It wasn't easy to get the little one to accompany him for a meal, but tonight, a few outsiders appeared. The person who was in a good mood after eating his fill started to feel uncomfortable again. Night came as scheduled. The Liang sisters arrived at the living room early. As one of the hosts, Chu Qingyan came out to greet them. As usual, the nannies were nitpicking at her from the side, saying that she was a future princess consort, so how could she dress so simply that it would be beneath her status to receive guests, and that she would neglect the guests, and so on. The corners of Chu Qingyan's mouth twitched. If she had a hairpin on her head, she would probably become the 1,000-hairpin guanyin. Originally, she didn't like to wear jewelry. Today, for the sake of the occasion, she specially wore a few pearl hairpins. She didn't expect that she would still become a target of gossip. However, it also proved that if people insisted on finding fault with you, they could also find bones in an egg. Liang Danjing, who was standing at the side, tried to help her out. Sister Chu is a natural beauty. You don't have to wear gold and silver like us. Chu Qingyan gave her thanks with a grin. This help really wasn't much. When Liang Danbing heard this, she glanced at Chu Qingyan. Even though her sister's words were just to sell a favor to Chu Qingyan, it had to be said that when Chu Qingyan had appeared in women's clothing, she had really stunned everyone in the hall. Even though she didn't want to admit defeat, she had to admit that this person's appearance, even the number one beauty in the capital, wouldn't be able to stand next to her and compete with her for glory. Originally, she had thought that she was outstanding enough in men's clothing, but she didn't think that she would be even more dazzling in women's clothing. Liang Danjing stood at the side and intentionally or unintentionally looked at Chu Qingyan. She was wearing a fiery crimson dress with irregular folds from her waist to the hem. With every step she took, large peony flowers bloomed. Her slender waist was tied with a red belt. She was thin, but it wasn't that she couldn't be held in one's hand. Instead, she was like an emerald green bamboo. With her straight back, she gave people a kind of arrogant aura that couldn't be ignored. Her slender eyebrows were long and slanted. They weren't weak, but added a heroic spirit. Her deep eyes were deep and long, beautiful but not charming. Her pink lips were slightly curved. Even if she wasn't smiling, she gave people a feeling of being bathed in the spring breeze. Her skin was creamy, but it wasn't pure white. When the petals fell into the water, they rippled with a red shadow. As a woman, she was already subdued by the outstanding appearance of the person in front of her, let alone any other man. Liang Danjing slightly pursed her lips. Her gaze moved away from Chu Qingyan's body without leaving a trace. If the enemy didn't move, she couldn't disturb the morale of the army. Even if this battle wasn't going to be easy, they had to pick up their weapons and kill her without leaving a single one alive. When she was dressed as a man, Chu Qingyan was surrounded by people of all ages. Now that she was dressed as a woman, she didn't care at all. After all, she wouldn't lose a piece of flesh from being stared at. Because it was almost the end of spring and the beginning of summer, the days were long. Although it was already evening, the sky was still bright. Chu Qingyan estimated that it was about time, so she ordered the kitchen to serve the dishes. "Big Sister Chu, why isn't eldest cousin here yet? Is he delayed by something?" Liang Danbing didn't really want to see this eldest cousin of hers. It was just that the rumors were too bad. She kept mentioning it because she already saw Chu Qingyan as an enemy. She didn't want her to feel comfortable, so she kept finding fault with her. Chu Qingyan really didn't want to pay attention to her, but seeing how she kept causing trouble for her, she felt very apologetic. She couldn't help replying, "Haste makes waste, Bingju, don't be impatient." When these words came out, Liang Danbing's face turned red as she glared at her, but she couldn't say a single word to refute it. She could only turn her head to the side. Chu Qingyan let out a sigh of relief. This little girl finally stopped. That was enough. But she was a bit confused right now. Did something happen to Big Ice Cube? But it wasn't time yet, so she suppressed her emotions. Speak of the devil. Footsteps came from outside the door and then Huo Ling walked in first. He said to Chu Qingyan, "Little princess consort, His Highness is here." Following that, Xiao Su slowly appeared at the door. Because of the rumors, the Liang family's beautiful sisters were afraid of Xiao Su, but they were still young girls. The last time they saw him was several years ago, so they were still very curious about him and looked forward to seeing him. When the ice-cold mask entered their eyes, the Liang family's beautiful sisters trembled from the coldness in his eyes. In order to leave a good impression on their eldest cousin today, they had chosen expensive and thin clothes. Even though it was the end of spring, the night wind was still cold. The two's lips were slightly pale, but it was more of a psychological effect. Chu Qingyan saw the mask on his face that she hadn't seen in a long time and her heart twitched, feeling a bit of pain. Because in the past few days, Big Ice Cube had been staying with her in the house, so she had forgotten that every time he faced outsiders, he always wore a mask. In reality, these days were very tiring. At this moment, her heart ached for him. Eldest cousin. The Liang family's two sisters immediately stood up and bowed to Xiao Su. Xiao Su nodded. He walked past them and sat down next to the little fellow before looking at her. Chu Qingyan blushed with shame. This is your cousin, you're not greeting her? Xiao Su winked at her. Chu Qingyan could only say to the Liang family's two sisters, sit, the food is here, don't be polite. When the Liang family's beautiful sisters saw Xiao Su for the first time, they felt his coldness. They gave a cold shiver. Chapter 789. Although the two Liang sisters were dissatisfied with Chu Qingyan's greeting, they had no choice but to sit down and eat. Xiao Su did not see the two of them the entire time, eating elegantly and appropriately. The two Liang sisters were unwilling to let their first meeting end like this. They came with a purpose, so they could not waste their time on eating. Thus, Liang Danbing rolled her black eyes, then smiled playfully and said to Xiao Su, eldest cousin, we brother and sister haven't seen each other in a long time. Do you still remember your younger sister's name? Xiao Su frowned and looked up at her. Was her name important to him? Liang Danbing did not expect this question. It was as if she had fallen into a bottomless pit, and there was no response. Although she was a bit embarrassed, she was also someone from an aristocratic family, and her ability to smooth things over was not bad. She only heard her own question and answer. Younger sister sees that eldest cousin is so forgetful that he definitely won't remember. Younger sister is Bing girl. 5 years ago, younger sister was only 10 years old. As the saying goes, a girl changes 18 times between childhood and womanhood. Eldest cousin probably won't be able to recognize me. After saying this, she smiled like a little girl, without any shrewdness in her heart. Chu Qingyan greatly admired this little girl's courage to kick an iron plate. At this time, Liang Danjing also spoke. When I first met eldest cousin, he was not as tall as this table. Now that time has passed, we have all grown up. Liang Danjing smiled gently, and the atmosphere changed from the initial dull to lively. Unfortunately, Xiao Su did not speak, and only nodded out of courtesy. The main character ignored her, but Chu Qingyan had to suffer. She could only smile at the side and ask the main character to eat more. Although the two Liang sisters did not receive a response, they were already mentally prepared and did not feel disappointed. Instead, they felt that this Xiao Su was similar to the rumors. The only difference was that although this Xiao Su's face was burned, wearing a mask did not diminish the noble aura he exuded. On the contrary, just by looking at his side profile, they could feel this man's tall and straight stature. The young girl's heart was a bit moved. Or it could be said that their fates had already been decided when they left the capital, so all they could do was think of a way to gain the favor of this person. So, in order to achieve their goal and confuse their opponent, they had to confuse themselves first. When Liang Danbing saw that Xiao Su was ignoring her, she turned her attention to Chu Qingyan. She began to ask about feminine things, such as embroidery, poetry, or other things that could show off her identity and demean Chu Qingyan. To be honest, Chu Qingyan wasn't very interested in embroidery, but it didn't mean that she didn't understand it. After all, she had a mother who was very proficient in embroidery. Therefore, Chu Qingyan was able to answer smoothly. Liang Danjing was surprised. She had thought that Chu Qing hadn't grown up in the capital and that Lianqing was a remote village. She hadn't expected her to be so proficient in these things. Although Chu Qingyan replied with a smile on her face, she was smiling so much that her face was about to stiffen. Couldn't the two of them just quietly be beautiful women? Or should he just let her be a quiet beauty? Just as Liang Danbing felt that this wasn't enough and was about to switch to her own specialty, Xiao Su, who hadn't said a word since entering the room, suddenly spoke. Don't talk when eating. After these words were spoken, the people at the table became so quiet that even a pin drop could be heard. Chu Qingyan sighed in her heart. As expected, when he didn't speak, it was fine, but when he did, it was shocking. At this time, a piece of pork rib fell into her bowl. When she raised her head, she saw Xiao Su take away his chopsticks, and the Liang sisters couldn't hide their shock. Chu Qingyan felt that the pent-up anger in her chest had suddenly dissipated. She turned her head slightly and looked at the person next to her. Her eyes were full of smiles. Then she returned the favor and also picked up a piece of pork rib for him. Xiao Su didn't refuse and put it in his mouth. Didn't they say that big cousin was cold to people? Didn't they say that big cousin didn't know how to be gentle with women after years of fighting? Didn't they say that big cousin had a serious obsession with cleanliness? Why didn't it match the information they received? The Liang sisters' appetite completely disappeared because they couldn't digest the scene in front of them. Previously, when they were still in the capital, Aunt had said that Chu Qingyan was just a rock in their path and would not pose any threat. As long as they could stand beside eldest cousin, they would be able to kick Chu Qingyan aside. However, what they saw now was not the case. The Liang sisters looked at each other and received each other's information. After looking away, they seriously ate their meal. It seemed that some things needed to be considered at length. Chu Qingyan saw that the two of them had calmed down, and that the huge rock in her heart had disappeared. She regained her lost appetite, and she was able to eat the rice in her bowl with ease. After the meal, the Liang sisters had been silent for a long time and could finally speak. But at this time, Hualing quickly walked in. "Master, there's an urgent report." Xiao Su nodded and then patted the hand of the person beside him, indicating for her to take good care of him. Then he stood up and confidently left without a trace. The Liang sisters, who had prepared a stomach full of words, watched him walk away like this. They were stunned in place, as if they had been slapped in the face. Chu Qingyan looked at the two of them, who were in high spirits, and then had a basin of cold water poured over them. It was quite funny and she wanted to laugh, but she felt that it wasn't very kind. So she suppressed her laughter and stood up to say to the two of them, "Miss Cousins, you must be tired from the long journey. I have already had someone boil some hot water for you. If there's anything you need, just order the servants. If there's anything you want to eat, just send someone to tell me." Since she had already said this, Liang Danjing and Hualing didn't have anything else to say. They could only nod and thank her before preparing to leave. Watching the two of them leave gracefully, Chu Qingyan couldn't help holding her head and shaking her head when she thought about how the two of them had tried to step on her to gain the big ice cube's attention. Who couldn't see through such a little trick? When Chu Qingyan ordered the servants to clean up the leftovers and then walked out, there were already 3 big Buddhas waiting outside. Chu Qingyan saw this scene and knew that Empress Liang was going to make trouble for her. Chu Qingyan walked forward with a smile. "Nannies, what's the matter? Why are you waiting here?" Just now in the hall, these people were very respectful and attentive to the big ice cube. They didn't have the arrogant attitude at all. She thought that they probably wanted to make trouble for her. Nanny Zheng looked at Chu Qingyan and was obviously very dissatisfied. She said coldly, "Ninth Miss Chu, although His Highness usually doesn't restrict you, as the princess of a country, you must have the etiquette that a princess should have. So the Empress ordered us to be responsible for teaching you the rules of the palace during your stay in Jiangnan. We hope that Ninth Miss Chu can cooperate well." Hearing this kind and impatient tone, Chu Qingyan snorted coldly in her heart. They really came to make trouble for her. Chapter 790. When Chu Qingyan walked into the courtyard while stretching, she found that her room was brightly lit. She couldn't help but raise her eyebrows in confusion. Xining, who was beside her, shook her head, indicating that she didn't know. She faintly had an answer in her heart as she walked up the steps and stepped into the room. As expected, the person who had said that he had an urgent matter was currently standing leisurely in her room, flipping through the papers that she had written and drawn when she was bored. "Why are you so late?" Hearing the noise, Xiao Su didn't even turn his head as he spoke indifferently. Chu Qingyan shrugged. "Isn't it because your imperial mother sent people over?" As she spoke, she walked to the table and poured herself a cup of water, slowly drinking it. Xiao Su finally raised his head and asked in confusion, "What do you mean?" Chu Qingyan heard this and said in a self-mocking tone, Perhaps Imperial Mother felt that a country girl like me wasn't worthy of her noble son, so she hated me for failing to live up to her expectations and sent a few teaching mamas to help me up the wall. Xiao Su was amused by her tone and walked 2 steps to her. He raised his hand and placed it on her head, smiling brightly. You're not that bad. Of course she didn't think that she was that bad, but how could she stop others from thinking that way? And what kind of tone was this big ice cube using? It seemed like he was taking pleasure in her misfortune. She simply couldn't tolerate it. Just as she was about to explode, the person in front of her shook a piece of paper in his hand. The mask on his face had already been taken off, and at this moment, his eyes were bright. The dim yellow candlelight fell on his face, sparkling brightly. That jade-like face seemed to be covered in a thin layer of mist, making people unable to see it clearly and wanting to get closer to see it clearly. And it was because she was bewitched by his expression that she didn't notice what was written on the paper in his hand. Xiao Su wanted to say something, but he stopped himself in the end. Then, he quietly put the piece of paper into his sleeve. Come back to your senses. He nonchalantly bent his fingers and tapped her smooth forehead with the back of his fingers as he teased her. Chu Qingyan felt a slight pain in her forehead. She bit her lip and complained to herself, beauty is alluring, beauty is alluring. Don't hit my head all the time, I'm going to be stupid. Xiao Su was amused. Can you become smarter if you don't knock? Chu Qingyan refused to look at him out of spite. Seeing that the person in front of him didn't answer, Xiao Su lowered his head slightly. What entered his eyes was her beautiful neck that was exposed to the side. The lines of her neck were beautiful, and her skin was like jade. His throat went dry. He suppressed the inexplicable feeling in his body and changed the topic. Are you satisfied with my performance tonight? This sentence made Chu Qingyan slightly stunned. It took her a long time to understand what he was referring to. Moreover, his tone sounded as if he had done something incredible and was waiting for the affirmation of someone he cared about. She suddenly felt a tingling sensation in her heart, as if she was emotionally moved. Performance? What are you referring to? I'm not you. How would I know what you're talking about? Chu Qingyan pretended not to know what he was talking about. She just wanted him to say it himself. His gaze fell on her face again. Xiao Su smirked and reached out to pinch her pink cheeks. He said in a tone that made her stomp her feet. You're so smart. I know you understand. Chu Qingyan was at a loss for words. She rolled her eyes at him in a muffled voice. Now he had the nerve to admit that she was smart? I don't want to talk to you. Hurry up and go to sleep. I'm going to change my clothes and rest. She pushed him and began to chase him away. Xiao Su frowned. So early? Chu Qingyan looked at the sky. It was indeed a little early, but she had no choice. She sighed sadly. I have to change my schedule in the future. Those old nannies want me to wake up early tomorrow to set the rules. It's my first day, so I can't make a mistake, right? Hearing this, Xiao Su's brows furrowed. If you don't want to, then refuse them. You don't have to do something you don't like. She really wanted to ignore them, but they were sent by the big ice cube's Mufei. She couldn't scold or hit them. She could only coax and treat them well. This was the so-called, it's easier to invite the devil than to send him away. Chu Qingyan shook her head and said with a smile, all right, don't worry about it. I haven't seen what the palace's rules look like yet. It's for me to see them first. Who knows, it might come in handy when I return to the palace in the future. Xiao Su knew that she had made up her mind and didn't say anything else. He raised his hand to press her head against his chest and said in a low voice, if you find it difficult, just tell me. Chu Qingyan rubbed against his chest before nodding in agreement. After he left, Chu Qingyan weakly leaned against the table and muttered to herself, who wants to see these rules? I'll deal with it first. I can't embarrass the big ice cube. The Liang sisters returned to the courtyard and sat together to talk. Sister, I don't like Chu Qingyan very much. Liang Danbing said bluntly with disdain in her voice. Liang Danjing said, this Chu Qingyan doesn't give me the feeling that she's like the young misses of the officials' families in the capital. She's a bit unreliable. She wasn't as straightforward as her sister. She was good at observation. In the short two encounters, she felt that Chu Qingyan didn't care about them at all. Or rather, she didn't care about their appearance at all. She didn't show any jealousy or rejection the entire day. It was as if she really was entertaining her cousins as their sister-in-law. She had to admit that Chu Qingyan's way of handling matters was something that even she, who had always been praised for being a reasonable person, could not do as well as Chu Qingyan. At the same time that she admired her, she also developed a deep dislike for Chu Qingyan. Her sister's thoughts were more transparent, so she knew that her sister was jealous of Chu Qingyan's beauty. As for herself, she wasn't just jealous of Chu Qingyan's appearance, but more because of her temperament and style of doing things. If Chu Qingyan appeared in the capital one day, she would definitely set off a storm in front of the rich and noble families. She absolutely couldn't allow this to happen. Liang Danjing slowly twirled the handkerchief in her hand, a faint cold light appearing in her eyes. She was determined to make Chu Qingyan disappear from Jiangnan. Sometimes, a woman wanted to kill another woman. It wasn't necessarily because of a man. It could also be because of pure jealousy or a sense of crisis. Liang Danbing didn't notice her sister's strange behavior and continued, "Sister, I found that eldest cousin is really cold. When I talk to him, I feel like I'm standing in an ice cellar when he looks at me." After saying this, she even pretended to shake her shoulders to show that she was really cold. Liang Danjing smiled indifferently. "It doesn't matter. What we want is that position and what?" Liang Danbing had always followed her sister's lead, so she immediately asked. Liang Danjing raised the corner of her mouth, "And as long as we can replace Chu Qingyan's position, everything that eldest cousin did to her today, we will definitely be able to get in the future." Liang Danbing nodded and smiled contentedly. "That's right. We still have a few strong backers. What's there to be afraid of?" But some people didn't know. In fact, there was no such thing as being cold and aloof in the world. It was just that the other party wasn't you. There was no such thing as replacing or not replacing. Chapter 791. She slept until dawn. By the time Chu Qingyan opened her eyes, there was already some light outside. She really wanted to cover herself with the blanket and go back to sleep, but she resisted the urge to sleep. She ran her fingers through her hair and got out of bed in one go. She didn't sleep too much. She had something important to do early in the morning. After she finished washing up, Xining opened the door and came in, rubbing her sleepy eyes. "Good morning, master." "Well, I'll prepare breakfast first." Before Chu Qingyan finished speaking, there was a sound outside. "Ninth Miss Chu, are you up?" It was Mammy Li's voice. Chu Qingyan twitched her mouth slightly. It seemed that she couldn't have breakfast. "Xining, go to sleep for a while." After that, Chu Qingyan went out. Xining hurriedly followed him out. How could she still have the mood to sleep at this moment? As soon as she went out, she saw Mammy Li waiting at the door. Chu Qingyan smiled politely. "Good morning, Mammy Li. Miss, are you kidding? The sun is coming up. It's still early." Mammy Li said with a smile, hiding a knife. Chu Qingyan didn't care. It was early in the morning. She didn't want to make trouble for herself. "Why don't I see the other two mamas? I'll teach you the basic etiquette this morning. Come with me." Mammy Li raised her chin and walked forward. "You don't watch the road. Be careful not to fall to death," Xining whispered. Chu Qingyan smiled and gave her a warning look before catching up with her. As soon as they walked, they came to the side yard, which was the place arranged for the Liang sisters and the three mamas to live. Chu Qingyan raised her eyebrows. Was she going to enter the wolf's den? She remained calm on the surface, followed Mammy Li to the courtyard, and then stopped. Mammy Li turned to look at her and looked up and down at Chu Qingyan. Her eyes were full of disdain. "I just observed your standing and walking posture. It's not satisfactory. So today, I'll start with your standing posture." Chu Qingyan expressed no objection. She had practiced martial arts for so many years, and her stance was the straightest among all the women. But if the other party wanted to find fault, it would be reasonable no matter what they said. Nanny Li said to the maidservant beside her, "Bai He, go get a vase for ninth young Miss Chu." Chu Qingyan glanced at the maidservant. Strictly speaking, she should be a palace maid. Behind her, there were several palace maids who were bowing. They were all brought over from the palace by the nannies. In addition, the Liang sisters each had 3 maidservants accompanying them. It could be said that they had brought a large group of people with them to the south this time. Other than these, there were also the guards sent by Empress Liang. She bowed her head and smiled. In order to make trouble for her, Empress Liang had made a lot of efforts. When the vase was brought over, Nanny Li looked at it and felt that it was not enough. Thus, she said to Chu Qingyan, "I think that young mistress is tall and strong. A mere vase will not be of much use. Bai He, go add some water." Tall and strong? Xi Ning was stunned. What kind of nonsense was this nanny talking about? My master is as petite as a flower when standing beside you. You are the one who is tall and strong. Your whole family is tall and strong. But because of her identity, Xi Ning held her breath and did not dare to say anything. When the full vase was placed on top of her head, Chu Qingyan felt that it was a little heavy. She furrowed her brows subtly. A rattan appeared in Mammy Li's hand. She swung her hand and hit the back of her hand. "Okay, put your hand down. If you still need to hold it, what's the use of being a teacher?" Chu Qingyan found the center of gravity and was about to let go, but Mammy Li suddenly made a move. With her skills, it was not difficult for her to dodge, but she took it. There was a red mark on her white skin. In this cold morning, it was painful and numb. "Please forgive me, Mississippi. We learned the rules in the palace. But we learned faster after suffering some physical pain," Mammy Li said with a fake smile. Chu Qingyan twitched the corner of her mouth as a response. Xi Ning saw this scene and almost rushed out. Why did the old witch treat her master like this? Chu Qingyan was not surprised to see Xi Ning's angry look. She sighed faintly. She had already told her not to follow, but she was still so persistent. Fortunately, this girl was not impulsive. But she was also worried that something would happen. Chu Qingyan signaled her to leave with her eyes. Xi Ning knew what her master was thinking. She shook her head and promised not to make a sound and not to disturb her master. Then she had a chance to stay aside. During this time, Mammy Li did not stop her rattan. "Miss, you have to straighten your back. You are hunchbacked. You don't look like a lady from a respectable family. Your legs should be straight and slightly bent. What do you look like? The bottle can't fall. I heard that this bottle is expensive. It's not good if it falls." Obviously, her back was straighter than a pine tree, and her legs were not bent. But the rattan still fell down. Every time, it hit the most vulnerable part of the human body. Chu Qingyan endured it one by one. If it were other people, they would have fainted. Xi Ning felt more and more distressed, and tears welled up in her eyes. When Nanny Li saw that Chu Qingyan's face was gradually turning pale, and Xi Ning's face was filled with anger but did not dare to speak up, she became even more arrogant. Chu Qingyan was annoyed by her endless behavior. When she saw that the rattan was about to hit her arm again, she could not help saying coldly, "Mammy, it's the first class. You'd better be merciful. Otherwise, when I see His Highness today and he asks me where I got the injury, I really can't explain it." Her tone was colder than the morning wind and aggressive. Mammy Li was stunned at once. In addition, Chu Qingyan's words were reasonable. Mammy Li looked at the red marks on the back of her hand. She originally chose the invisible places to hit, but she didn't expect that she was so excited that she missed a lot of places. Thinking of His Highness in different eyes, Mammy Li was so scared that she broke out in a cold sweat. She immediately put down the rattan, but she felt that she was at a disadvantage. Mammy Li said eagerly, "It's true that a strict teacher produces a fine student. Miss, you have been standing for 2 hours, and you can keep this posture. For the sake of your progress, I'll put down the rattan first." Chu Qingyan raised her eyebrows and smiled faintly. Her smile was as cold as frost. "If you weren't Empress Liang's servant, your head would have been separated from your body when the first whip fell. Because you have to look at the owner before beating a dog." Although the rattan was not very lethal, she was a girl with delicate skin and tender flesh. Every time she was hit, it hurt. If she was injured during training, it didn't matter. But she was taught a lesson for no reason. She felt aggrieved. She was not a block of wood. She would be tired after standing for a long time, let alone with such a heavy water bottle on her head. She faintly felt a little dizzy. At this time, several footsteps came from afar. Did they come again? Don't be like an old woman in her 70s or 80s. As he spoke, the rattan fell. Nanny Hong was tall and strong, and she was even more powerful than Nanny Li. Chu Qingyan was hit squarely, and her entire body was unsteady. She could not even protect the water bottle on her head. Bang! The vase fell to the ground and broke. It happened to fall at the feet of the two mamas. The water splashed everywhere. The two mamas couldn't avoid it and were half drenched. Shi Ning clapped her hands and praised them in her heart, but she nimbly stood in front of her master to protect her. If these two people became angry out of humiliation and wanted to take revenge, she would fight them to the death even if she had to risk her life. Shi Ning was right. When Mammy Hong and Mammy Zheng came to their senses, they were so angry that they wanted to tear Chu Qingyan apart. Chu Qingyan recovered a little strength. She saw them spread out their hands to protect her behind like a hen protecting a chick. She was moved and amused. It turned out that the little girl had been with Jean Xian for a long time and had learned to curb violence with violence. But at this time, it was better not to make enemies for her. Otherwise, she would be targeted by these mamas, and the little girl would suffer. So Chu Qingyan raised her hand and patted the little girl on the shoulder. She smiled at her and said, "It's okay. I'll do it." Shi Ning carefully observed her face and reluctantly retreated behind her. She really wanted to go up and slap them on behalf of her master. Nanny Hong said angrily, "Miss, the old servants have taught you conscientiously, but you are venting your anger on the old servants. It doesn't matter. The old servants are the servants, and you are the master. The old servants dare not say anything. But don't you feel sorry for the broken vase? Although His Highness is the eldest son of the emperor and has a strong family background, he can't squander like you. No matter how much wealth he has, he will be squandered by you." Mammy Zheng immediately said. They echoed each other, as if Chu Qingyan really did something wrong. After the two of them finished speaking, Chu Qingyan raised her head to look at them. Her gaze scanned the two of them as she said in a neutral tone, "Since you know that the vase is expensive, yet you are using it as an instructor. Qingyan, I wonder if the two of you trust a beginner like me too much, or do you treat something that does not belong to you this way?" They just wanted to make a fuss. After all, they couldn't say anything if the vase was smashed. But they didn't expect that they would be checkmated by her. Chu Qingyan's lips curled into a smile. "Furthermore, the two of you seem to have gotten something wrong." They frowned and looked at her. This vase was given to Qingyan by a friend. Even if it was smashed, His Highness won't say anything. Mammy Hong and Mammy Zheng looked at each other and didn't know what to say. Chu Qingyan could clearly see the sinister look in their eyes. She said calmly, "There is one more thing. Since Nanny Hong had said that servants are servants, and masters are masters, it is impossible to overstep their boundaries. Therefore, I hope that the few of you will be aware of your status. Qingyan naturally respects the few of you, but there is no guarantee that when you return to the capital in the future, if you meet a narrow-minded noble lord, you will not have a good ending." This slap was really painful. They were angry but didn't dare to say anything. They could only accept it. Chu Qingyan didn't plan on falling out with them, so her tone was still gentle. But the meaning behind her words made it clear that she wasn't a soft persimmon. If they wanted to bully her, they had to know their limits. Otherwise, if they splashed on her, they couldn't blame her. At this time, Huoling walked in from outside. He swept a glance and saw the situation in the yard. He walked in front of Chu Qingyan with a smile and respectfully said, "Little Princess Fei, Master woke up early in the morning and couldn't find you. So you were here." Chu Qingyan turned around and looked at the two. Mammy Hong and Mammy Zheng were missing a way out. Now was the perfect time. Since His Highness is looking for you, don't delay. But don't forget about the afternoon training. Chu Qingyan smiled and agreed. Then she turned and left. But when she left, Chu Qingyan's eyes inadvertently fell on the window by the corridor. A light flashed in her eyes and then disappeared. Chapter 793. When she walked out of the courtyard, Chu Qingyan lost all her strength and her legs almost turned to jelly. It was a good thing that Xining had been paying close attention to her the entire time. She quickly supported her and prevented her from touching the ground. Hua Ling on the side was frightened by her appearance and quickly said, "Little princess, are you all right? Do you want me to call Ethereal to check you? Did the old women inside bully you? Don't worry, this subordinate will report this to master." Hua Ling's flustered appearance made Chu Qingyan feel funny. It was a pity that she did not have the strength to laugh at this time and could only comfort him. "It's fine, I just didn't eat this morning and am a bit tired. It's nothing serious, don't worry. You don't need to tell His Highness, understand?" How could Hua Ling be at ease? When had he ever seen the energetic little princess become so weak? But under the little princess' insistence, he reluctantly agreed not to report to master. Chu Qingyan finally let out a sigh of relief. "Go back and tell His Highness first. I'll be there later." Hua Ling nodded and left. "Xining, help me back." She had lost most of her strength and being able to hold on at this time was already her limit. Xining quickly nodded. After walking for a long time, the master and servant finally finished walking. Her entire body was covered in cold sweat. Although those vines could not compare to whips, they were still real. When she took off her clothes, Xining saw the red marks on her back. She covered her mouth and almost cried out. "They're all small injuries, don't cry. Like this, I won't feel at ease letting you apply medicine for me." Chu Qingyan knew that this little lass was truly frightened and could only tease her with a smile. At this time, how could Xining care about these things? She instantly said fiercely, "Lie down and don't talk." Chu Qingyan choked. This little lass actually yelled at her? She even provoked this little lass's tigress nature. It seemed like this little lass was really angry this time. It was a pity that she did not dare to reply. It was already enough that master had done this much. She obediently laid down and let Xining help wipe her. Although it hurt, she still gritted her teeth and endured. Xining was fierce, but she did not dare to use too much strength. She tried her best to be gentle, afraid of hurting her master. But no matter how careful she was, her master's back was still tense. Just how ruthless was he? Xining sniffled and her heart ached to death. After wiping her body and applying medicine, Chu Qingyan felt like she had died once. In the past, she had never felt this bad even when she was seriously injured or sick. Just like the saying, "The king of hell is easy to see, but the little ghosts are hard to deal with." He had already passed the big wave, yet he was defeated by these small skirmishes. She shook her head, got dressed, and got up. "Master, master, 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 Xining master, Xining master, master, Xining." Mississippi Chu Qingyan waved her hand. "I have to go to His Highness courtyard." Xining master thought for a moment and nodded. She said angrily, "Yes, let's go and reason with His Highness. These old nannies are too much." Chu Qingyan smiled. "I'm not going to complain." She got off the bed and put on her shoes. Xining master pouted and said unhappily, "How can we let them off so easily? Master, you can't just break your teeth and swallow it." Chu Qingyan stood up and patted her shoulder. She said with a smile, "But we can't bite back after being bitten by a dog. Wouldn't that be too embarrassing?" Xining master felt that it was reasonable, but she still could not calm down. Her little face was still wrinkled. Chu Qingyan smiled and shook her head. She could only let her stay in the courtyard to tidy up and not follow her. Otherwise, with the big ice cube's sharp senses, he would definitely sense her emotions. When Chu Qingyan left the side courtyard, the window at the side of the corridor was quietly closed. Unfortunately, it had already fallen into the eyes of others. This room was where Liang Danjing lived, and the one who closed the window was Liang Danbing. Elder sister, Chu Qingyan was so badly tortured by the old nannies just now. It's so satisfying. If it weren't for the fear of being overheard, Liang Danjing would have clapped her hands and cheered. Earlier, Liang Danjing had also stood in front of the window for a while and witnessed the scene of Chu Qingyan being taught a lesson by the old nannies. Although she felt satisfied, she faintly felt uneasy. "Elder sister, what are you thinking about?" Seeing that her elder sister did not respond, Liang Danbing turned to look at her strangely. She found that her sister was in a daze and couldn't help but feel puzzled. Liang Danjing frowned slightly and looked at her younger sister seriously. "Don't you think that Chu Qingyan is not as simple as she looks?" "Why do you ask that?" In her opinion, Chu Qingyan was about the same age as them. How complicated could she be? Liang Danbing somewhat disagreed. Liang Danjing somewhat disagreed with her younger sister's love rival. She recalled Chu Qingyan's every move and word just now, and this feeling became stronger. She is very calm, not like the calmness her age should have, and she is very tolerant. Think about it, if the rattan fell on you, would you endure it for so long? Liang Danbing was slightly stunned. Her elder sister's words seemed to be reasonable. "Elder sister, what do you mean?" Liang Danjing continued. "Did you find that under the difficulties of the old nannies, she responded very calmly? Otherwise, she would not speak. Once she spoke, she would make people speechless. Just now, Nanny Li and Nanny Hong were almost fooled by her words." Liang Danbing carefully thought about it. It was indeed so. She couldn't help but become more serious. "I think that it's not that Chu Qingyan is unable to deal with Nanny Hong and the others, but that she disdains to make a move." Liang Danjing pondered for a moment before slowly speaking. This understanding made her feel very uncomfortable. Ever since she was a child, regardless of whether it was in the eyes of the Liang family or outsiders, she had always been well-educated and reasonable, considerate, and intelligent. This was something she had always been proud of. She had never thought that outside of the capital, there would be an opponent who was more outstanding than her in terms of appearance, personality, and ability. She felt that it was unfair that she had been born in the first place. Although she felt that her elder sister's words were somewhat reasonable, Liang Danbing felt that it was unfair to have such a high evaluation. "Elder sister, aren't you thinking too much? How could such an outstanding person be raised in such a desolate place like Lian City? Don't scare yourself." Liang Danjing chuckled and said, "Younger sister, do you know why she endured the old nanny's obvious difficulties? Because she was afraid of the empress behind Nanny Li and the others. If she fell out with them, it would be the same as falling out with Aunt. This result is not something she can bear." Liang Danbing suddenly understood. Then she laughed eerily. "So that's how it is. Then, she can only suffer in silence in the future." "That's right." Liang Danjing was silent for a moment. Then she revealed a strange light. "Or we can make good use of this situation." "Elder sister, what do you mean?" Liang Danbing's eyes lit up and she immediately asked. "Let's use Nanny Hong and the others to get rid of her. If we can't, it's not bad to make her unhappy. If she resists, she will offend Aunt." In this case, Liang Danjing didn't finish her words, but both of them understood the meaning. Chapter 794. When she arrived at the Big Ice Cube's courtyard, it had already been an hour since Hua Ling came to call her. So when Chu Qingyan walked in, she was a bit nervous, so she raised her head and revealed a bright smile. "Big Ice Cube, have you eaten breakfast yet?" she asked with a smile. Xiao Su was sitting at the table waiting for her. He looked outside when he heard this. "You're asking about breakfast at this time? Could it be that you haven't eaten yet?" The sun was already high up in the sky and it was already noon. Chu Qingyan felt a bit of regret. She quickly walked forward to sit down and said with a flattering smile, "Isn't it because I've been busy all morning that I'm hungry? The dishes that the kitchen made today look very delicious. Don't let it get cold, let's eat quickly." Xiao Su looked at her and did not say anything. Just now in the room, she only had a bit of porridge. She was so hungry that her chest was sticking to her back, but in front of the Big Ice Cube, she still ate slowly. However, compared to before, her movements were much faster. Xiao Su scooped a bowl of soup and placed it by her hand. His gaze fell on her body for a moment before he moved away. "How was your etiquette today?" he casually asked. Chu Qingyan nodded as she ate. "Maybe I'm a bit stupid, so I'm a bit slow." "So you were beaten?" Xiao Su suddenly asked. Chu Qingyan was stunned. How did the big ice cube know? Could it be that Hua Ling had a slip of the tongue? When she raised her head and saw him looking at the back of her hand holding the bowl, she finally understood. She quickly raised her hand with a smile. "In the past, when I was in school, didn't the teacher scold me with a ruler if I did something wrong? It's the same principle." Xiao Su gave an sound and continued eating. Seeing that he did not probe any further, Chu Qingyan finally let out a sigh of relief. She was even more careful when eating, so her sleeves wouldn't slip down and reveal the wound on her wrist. That wouldn't be something that could be covered up with just a few words. However, Chu Qingyan had forgotten that the person in front of her would be extremely nervous whenever she bumped into something. How could he let go of the red mark on the back of his hand so easily? At this time, there was a sound of footsteps outside the door. It was light and fragmented, and it didn't seem like someone who practiced martial arts. Chu Qingyan bit her hoof, but before she could react, Xiao Su had already reached out to the table beside him. The silver mask immediately flew towards him. By the time the people outside entered the room, he had already put on the mask and was sitting there as if nothing had happened. Liang Danbing walked in with her servants and nodded to Chu Qingyan before walking towards Xiao Su with a charming smile on her face. "Eldest cousin, this is the tonic soup that Danbing made for you. It tastes delicious. Drink it while it's hot." As she spoke, she gestured for the servants to bring the soup to the table. Chu Qingyan had already put down her chopsticks. She took a handkerchief from the side and wiped the corners of her mouth. Then she raised her eyebrows and looked at the scene. This was openly trying to steal her man. Liang Danbing had already asked around. This Chu Qingyan almost didn't cook, so it was impossible for her to prepare food for His Highness. Since this was the case, she would start from this aspect. Men liked women who were clever and considerate. Moreover, if you wanted to capture a man, you had to capture his stomach first. Her craftsmanship had been praised by her brothers and sisters. Moreover, she believed that no matter what, her heart had won over Chu Qingyan. Therefore, at this moment, she lowered her head slightly and revealed a shy and timid expression. Her eyes were filled with a complacent smile. The feeling of stepping on Chu Qingyan was really too delightful. So much so that she had forgotten that Xiao Su had been cold to her during dinner last night. She raised her head in anticipation of Xiao Su's praise. However, what Liang Danbing didn't know was that in the early years, Chu Qingyan often cooked pastries and dishes. However, in Xiao Su's eyes, it was just a waste of time with him. Therefore, he strictly prohibited her from entering the kitchen, which created this misconception for Liang Danbing. Xiao Su didn't even look at the tonic soup. Instead, he frowned and said, "Is there no one in the kitchen? You actually let a guest cook?" Chu Qingyan replied self-reproachfully, "It's my negligence in management." Liang Danbing was stunned. She didn't get the praise she expected, nor did she get the other's unhappy reproach. It was completely different from what she had expected. Moreover, the development of the situation had already gone off the rails. Liang Danbing immediately explained, No, it's not the kitchen's fault. It's little sister, who wanted to make some food for eldest cousin. It's little sister's small token of appreciation. It has nothing to do with anyone else." Although Liang Danbing was proud and arrogant, she still understood that she couldn't offend people the moment she arrived in Jiangnan. However, she didn't expect to hear Xiao Su say, "Pour the soup back where it came from." His tone was exactly like, "Scram back to where you came from." Liang Danbing was instantly stunned. Not only had her intentions been rejected, but her face had also been ruthlessly trampled on. She didn't know how to react at all. It was all her fault for being too impulsive. When she heard that Chu Qingyan always ate with eldest cousin, and that other than the dinner they ate with him last night, they ate in their own courtyard, she felt somewhat indignant. If she had known earlier, she would have listened to her older sister and not acted rashly. She would have waited and observed the situation first. Chu Qingyan didn't say anything at the side. At this time, she saw that Liang Danbing's face was pale and bloodless. Although she felt that Liang Danbing was reaping what she had sown, she was still a young girl after all. Thus, she helped her out by saying, "Many thanks for younger cousin Bing's intentions. It's just that our family's highness doesn't like to eat these things. We've troubled you." The corners of Liang Danbing's mouth twitched. Her expression didn't change as she transferred all of her anger onto Chu Qingyan. She said coldly, "Younger sister will pay attention in the future and make some things that eldest cousin likes." Finishing, Liang Danbing curtsied to Xiao Su and said with a gentle smile, "Since eldest cousin doesn't like these things, then Bing Yatu will withdraw. In the future, if eldest cousin wants to eat something, just have someone tell Bing Yatu. Then I won't disturb you anymore. Bing Yatu will withdraw first." She spoke so hurriedly because she was afraid that Xiao Su wouldn't give her face. Liang Danbing turned and glared hatefully at Chu Qingyan before leaving. Chu Qingyan rubbed her nose. This change of attitude was really fast. Also, did she misunderstand? Big Ice Cube didn't like to eat her food. He said it as if other people wanted to eat it. "Why are you looking at those unimportant people? Hurry up and eat. Don't cry when it gets cold and your stomach hurts." Xiao Su raised his hand to knock her head as he said helplessly. Chu Qingyan didn't immediately eat when she heard this. Instead, she stared at him without blinking. This made Xiao Su a bit puzzled. "Can looking at me fill your stomach?" Chu Qingyan pursed her lips into a smile. "Big Ice Cube, I find that you seem to be a man of few words to others, but you're a chatterbox to me." Chatterbox? This word made Xiao Su's mouth twitch. This little fellow really dared to say anything. "So I helped you vent your anger just now. Are you satisfied?" He didn't forget the displeasure that flashed through Liang Danbing's eyes when she came in. Chu Qingyan was stunned. So Big Ice Cube thought that she didn't like Liang Danbing, but he didn't know why she didn't like her? She suddenly felt that getting angry at a blockhead was asking for trouble. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.